The Earth fusion was a cultivation dimension that many cultivators never understood in their entire life. Even strong cultivators at the Xian-Qi layer required luck and a great amount of insight in order to understand Earth fusions. The Earth fusion was a cultivation dimension that many cultivators never understood in their entire life. Even strong cultivators at the Xian-Qi layer required luck and a great amount of insight in order to understand Earth fusions. When a cultivator and the Earth fuse together, the human being absorbs strength from the Earth itself. Every movement was in perfect accordance with the forces of heaven and earth. Lin Feng's sword left a brilliant and resplendent arch-shaped light as it slashed through the air. The ones who were attacking Lin Feng were completely enveloped by that light. Lin Feng's sword energy seemed like it was coming from every direction. Immediately after, Lin Feng attacked those who had come to attack him. Each and every single one of them slowly collapsed. They had all fallen dead, in an instant. A single sword had annihilated all of them. Nobody had been lucky enough to escape. The hearts of the people in the crowd were pounding. A few strong Z government members had already been killed by Lin Feng's sword. He was a real sword master. In front of Lin Feng, Lin Haojie was indeed a humiliation to sword users. His radiant golden rain sword, in front of Lin Feng's sword, looked like a comedy act. Lin Feng's sword was genuinely sharp, he could actually kill people in an instant when using his sword. Zi Ying and Zi Qiong were stupefied. While looking at that young man wearing white clothes, they felt furious. How strong! Zi Qiong was sure that if he fought against Lin Feng, he would definitely die. There would be no suspense at all. He would end up the same as Lin Haojie. He wouldn't be able to withstand a single attack. Zi Qiong and Zi Xia turned around and looked at their father, Zi Ying. Only Zi Ying could kill Lin Feng. Not only them but everybody else was looking at Zi Ying. He was the patriarch of the Z government, how was he supposed to tolerate Lin Feng's attitude? Your martial skills are not bad, coldly said Zi Ying while staring at Lin Feng. Zi Ying had broken through to the 9th Ling Qi layer and could break through to the Xian Qi layer at any moment. He was able to sense Lin Feng's strength and he thought that Lin Feng's sword skills were only simple sword strikes. He had definitely used some type of trick. In other words, he had used an extremely powerful and high-level sword skill which was hidden as a simple sword strike. Martial skill, a smile appeared on Lin Feng's face as if something hilarious had been said. He hadn't used any of his skills at all. He had just carried out ordinary sword strikes, it was just that he used his sword fusion and his earth fusion during these attacks. That sword belonged to a higher dimension of cultivation. You don't understand at all, said Lin Feng indifferently. Zi Ying's understanding of cultivation wasn't advanced enough. He didn't know what earth fusion was. Only those who could penetrate into that dimension could understand it and know the strength it contained. For example, Lin Feng didn't need to use his spirit, he could close his eyes and was still able to sense a leaf falling in the distance. He could sense everything that was happening around him. Zi Ying couldn't do that. He could only trust his intuition, which might not always be correct. Even if he knew that some people could use earth fusion, he still couldn't understand it, he had sensed nothing at all. Obviously, he wasn't able to understand even the basics. You don't understand at all. When Zi Ying heard these words, said by Lin Feng with so much confidence, he felt really uncomfortable. A junior was telling him, in front of everybody, that he didn't understand something, it made him seem incredibly ignorant. I don't understand, said Zi Ying while smiling coldly and then added, you're still a child and you dare act in such an arrogant way, you do not know how vast the world is. You came here, caused trouble, killed people of the Z government and humiliated it, I will not simply kill you. I will cripple your cultivation. You will suffer every day of your life. You will suffer a fate much worse than death. Zi Ying's voice was piercingly cold. When the crowd his words, they also sensed a wave of coldness emerge from Zi Ying. Lin Feng was looking at Zi Ying. Immediately after, a smile appeared on his face, as if he had heard a joke. "Why are you smiling?" asked Ziying in an extremely cold way. "You are clearly afraid of me," said Lin Feng as calmly as before, and then continued, "I came to the Z government alone, I caused trouble during your children's wedding ceremony, killed your future son-in-law, and slaughtered a number of people who belonged to the Z government. The Z government and I cannot exist under the same sky, there is no way to change that. If you weren't afraid of me, you would have already attacked me, but right now, you are not entirely sure that you can fight against me. Therefore, you are only saying empty threats. You want to find out how strong I really am while also delaying for time." When Ziying heard Lin Feng, he was stupefied. Indeed, he was really afraid of Lin Feng. A moment ago, he hadn't understood anything about Lin Feng's sword. He was ignorant, and on top of that, he was afraid. What terrified Ziying is that he couldn't determine exactly how strong Lin Feng was. Otherwise, he wouldn't waste time talking nonsense to Lin Feng. He would have attacked Lin Feng immediately after the Z government members were killed. Lin Feng had managed to perfectly understand the situation. "No matter whom you are hoping will arrive, if you delay me long enough, today, you will die." Lin Feng took a step forwards while holding his sword. Lin Feng seemed to be walking extremely slowly, but when his suddenly sword diffused a bright and dazzling light, Lin Feng, in a flash, had already landed in front of Ziying. The crowd had the impression that they were hallucinating. How had Lin Feng crossed such an incredible distance in a flash? Boom! A purple illusionary spirit appeared behind Ziying, and it was incredibly huge. Ziying's entire body was enveloped in a resplendent purple light. Ziying's spirit was very mysterious. Surprisingly, when fighting against Lin Feng, he had released his spirit immediately. He was definitely proving Lin Feng's words, he was afraid of him. Because he was afraid of Lin Feng, he couldn't afford to be careless and had thus immediately released his spirit. Pish! Lin Feng's sword fell from the sky. "Purple fist," furiously shouted Ziying. His purple spirit rushed through the air and transformed into an illusion around Ziying. An incredible quantity of purple qi emerged and turned into a spiral, it spun around Ziying's hand. It looked like a purple fist had formed around Ziying's hand. Finally, the monstrous purple fist launched forward and bombarded the atmosphere. In a flash, on Ziying's fist, countless purple fists were rushing towards Lin Feng at full speed. PSH. Lin Feng's sword blocked the purple fists. Lin Feng was unceasingly moving his sword to block the bombardment of purple fists. His forearm felt incredibly sore from the continued pressure on his sword. The purple fist skill was a high-quality skill at the Xian level. That skill and the spirit complemented each other. It enabled members of the Z government to carry out extremely powerful attacks which had the strength of the D level. It was especially strong if it was used by a cultivator of the 9th Ling Qi layer. If he had used that skill against a mountain, a large crater would have appeared in it. Lin Feng's sword was becoming slower and slower as if he couldn't stand the pressure. His forearm felt heavier and heavier. However, he looked as calm as before. His heart was also filled with determination. His sword was extremely sharp. Lin Feng looked as if he could destroy anything. Sword masters had an incredible aura. The sword of a real master was capable of pure annihilation, and a real master would never retreat when using such a sword. Lin Feng's sword was extremely sharp and pierced the atmosphere with each movement. Lin Feng's sword was unceasingly destroying the purple fists. Retreat. Ziying's facial expression drastically changed. Lin Feng's sword was unceasingly moving as before. When he saw the sword heading straight for him, without hesitation, he jumped backwards. A moment later, Ziying's face was deathly pale because Lin Feng's sword had undergone a trajectory change and was now moving towards his son, Zi Qiong. Ziying was unable to block the attack. What would happen if Zi Qiong received that attack? "You would dare!" shouted Ziying furiously. Die, said Lin Feng coldly. Why wouldn't Lin Feng dare? If Zi Ling hadn't coincidentally picked him up on the side of the road, Zi Qiong would have caused harm to Duan Xinyi. At that moment, Lin Feng wasn't killing Zi Qiong for any other reason but to avenge Duan Xinyi. If Duan Xinyi had taken her own life, Lin Feng would have regretted it his entire life. When Zi Qiong saw that Lin Feng's sword was moving towards him at full speed, his heart twitched. His facial expression revealed hopelessness. Was he, Zi Qiong, going to die? Was he going to get killed on the day of his wedding and at the moment when he was about to enter the forbidden area? Psh. A small sound filled the atmosphere. Zi Qiong didn't think much longer. His eyes looked calm. Fear, hopelessness, he would have never thought that such a day would come for him. Zi Qiong slowly collapsed onto the floor. The people in the crowd held their breath and their hearts were pounding. The young master of the Zi government had been killed. Lin Feng's words weren't empty. If he said he was going to kill, he killed. He could pierce everything with his sword. Not only the head of the Zi government but everybody related to harming the princess had to die. Lin Feng was enraged. He would unleash all of his fury for the princess. How strong, what an incredibly strong young man. How strong, what an incredibly strong young man. Many people in the crowd were astonished. Their hearts were pounding. How old was Lin Feng? He seemed to be much younger than Zi Qiong. But he had killed Lin Haojia the Golden Rain Sword, he had killed some members from the Zi government and his sword had made a cultivator at the peak of the 9th Ling Qi layer retreat while he killed Zi Qiong. Monstrous was the only adequate word to describe Lin Feng's strength. The Zi government was the strongest and most influential group within the entire region. Besides, Lin Feng was only a young man and yet he dared to slaughter so many people from the Zi government, annihilating everything and killing anyone who tried to stop him. Zi Ling and Zi Yi, they couldn't believe their eyes, they had the impression that they were dreaming. They thought that Lin Feng was a piece of trash but in the end, he was much stronger than Lin Haojia, he was terrifyingly strong and had outstanding natural talent. He had even managed to make Zi Ying retreat. Duan Xinye's smile, while looking at Lin Feng's back, was getting bigger and bigger. She knew how hot-blooded and determined Lin Feng was. On that day, Lin Feng had chased and killed 5 incredibly strong cultivators to save her. Amongst those 8 people, all of them were stronger than Lin Feng. They had all broken through to the 7th Ling Qi layer. Lin Feng, relying on his fearless demeanor, looked like a war god as he killed the lieutenants of the Black Guard. In the end, only one was left alive. Lin Feng would risk his life for her. She was also ready to die if she could not be with him. It seemed like they were perfect for each other, nothing could separate them. Ah! A tragic shout filled the atmosphere which shocked the crowd. Zi Ying was fixedly staring at that corpse lying on the ground. He had only one son. He had spent many years raising him and shaping him into a strong cultivator. This was going to be a beautiful day for him, he was going to enter the forbidden area but at that moment, he was lying on the ground as a corpse. I want you to die. Zi Ying's voice was filled with hatred. He was fixedly staring at Lin Feng. His extremely strong spirit suddenly emitted insane roars, the spirit looked like it had gone insane. Blood was dripping from Lin Feng's sword. When he saw Zi Ying, who was roaring with sadness, killing intent filled Lin Feng's eyes. I also want you to die. Lin Feng ran towards Zi Ying. Boom! A spiral of purple qi rushed from Zi Ying's hand and formed a purple fist. Behind his body, his spirit was emitting an endless purple light. Zi Ying's purple fist bombarded the atmosphere towards Lin Feng. Then, the purple fist transformed into a silhouette that looked exactly like the purple spirit behind Zi Ying. Suddenly a huge purple cloud rushed through the air straight towards Lin Feng as if it wanted to swallow him entirely. Both attacks were now rushing towards him. Die! Lin Feng slashed with his sword and cut that purple giant in two, but the purple clouds continued moving towards Lin Feng at full speed. Besides, the purple silhouette reassembled itself from the two pieces. Die, die, die. Ziying was shouting furiously, he kept releasing purple spirals towards the giant silhouette. That purple giant suddenly moved its hand. An incredible purple fist attack emerged from its hand. Besides, the eyes of the purple giant looked like that of a human. Its eyes were filled with hatred, coldness and killing intent. This was also Ziying's state of mind at the time. What kind of attack is that? When the crowd saw that, they were stupefied. The energy had suddenly transformed into a purple giant, and on top of that, the purple giant could attack. It was as if Lin Feng now had to fight two opponents. Purple annihilation. A few of the direct descendants of the Z government were absolutely astonished. Purple annihilation was a skill which only the direct descendants of the Z government knew. Purple referred to color of the qi, the purple qi could transform. At that moment, that purple giant had actually appeared because Ziying was controlling it. Annihilation, because that attack was extremely powerful and it could destroy anything in its path. That giant was almost invincible. Even its attacks were unstoppable. It was almost impossible to protect one's life when facing such a powerful attack. It was an extremely powerful skill. His skill and spirit is really quite strange. At that moment, Lin Feng was also surprised. He had attacked that purple giant and cut it in two, but that had only wasted time. The purple cloud had almost reached him. That purple cloud was extremely strong, its only purpose was destruction. Lin Feng's vision seemed like it could pierce the very air itself. At that moment, he was standing there, but it felt like his presence had disappeared. Him and the earth were in complete symbiosis. His body had fused with the qi of heaven and earth. Die. The purple illusion was surprisingly speaking. Its voice was extremely cold. The deadly energy surrounded Lin Feng's body and then swallowed him. Where the hell did Lin Feng go? A furious shout filled the air. The silent crowd sighed. They only saw a white silhouette standing next to Duan Xinyi. If not Lin Feng, who else could it be? A moment before, the entire crowd had been fascinated by that purple cloud and hadn't focused on Lin Feng at all. How quick! When did he dodge? Thought the people in the crowd. Lin Feng had been way too quick. A moment before, it seemed like Lin Feng had disappeared without trace. They hadn't even noticed his movement. If I hadn't managed to penetrate into the Earth fusion dimension, I would have been badly hurt by that attack. What a strange spirit. As expected, I cannot afford to be negligent. Then, Lin Feng saw that purple giant suddenly transformed into a huge purple face. The face was horrifying. Ziying was standing behind it and remained motionless. His spirit was no longer behind his back but was fighting against Lin Feng. Roar! The giant roared and moved towards Lin Feng at full speed. Lin Feng was calmly standing there and could sense the qi released by the giant. Immediately after, a cold and indifferent smile appeared on his face. Lin Feng grabbed Duan Xinyi's, his silhouette flickered and he moved back. The giant was attacking Lin Feng but he continued to dodge, making it roar once again. Roar! The giant roared extremely loudly and then groaned. The crowd could only see that purple giant slowly dispersed. The purple cloud was slowly vanishing until it completely disappeared. It's gone. The crowd was astonished. They were looking at Ziying. His spirit was back behind him, but it was very small and looked extremely fragile. With your current strength, you don't even know how to perfectly control your spirit. Lin Feng smiled coldly. His perception was extremely sharp. At the moment the purple giant attacked him, Lin Feng had sensed that its strength was gradually getting weaker and weaker. Even though Ziying was doing his best to control it as much as possible, it was still gradually getting weaker, which was why Lin Feng had chosen to move back. As expected, he hadn't needed to dodge any longer, the purple cloud had vanished. A moment before, Ziying wanted to use all of his strength to kill Lin Feng, but unfortunately for him, he didn't have enough power. Now, it's my turn. Lin Feng took a step and released a deadly energy. A vast quantity of sword qi emerged. Lin Feng's sword emitted a piercingly cold light. Ziying's face was extremely pale. A moment before, he had used all his strength but hadn't managed to kill Lin Feng. He wouldn't have another opportunity. Besides, he had consumed all his qi reserves while controlling his spirit. If he didn't get killed by Lin Feng, that would be a stroke of luck. It's your turn, but you will never get the chance. At that moment, a majestic voice, as if it had come from the vault of heaven, spread through the atmosphere. The echoes of that filled the sky. Ziying was insanely shaking. His facial expression was sharp. The strongest cultivator of the Z government had finally arrived. The crowd and Lin Feng raised their heads and looked towards the sky above the palace. There was a silhouette which looked imposing and majestic in the sky. From high above, that person was looking at the corpses of the former members of the Z government. His desire to kill reached the heavens. Xian Qi Layer. The crowd was astonished. There was a rumor that the strongest person of the Z government wasn't Ziying at all but an old man at the Xian Qi Layer. At that moment, it seemed like the rumors turned out to be true. That strong cultivator of the Xian Qi Layer had appeared, and he had appeared because of Lin Feng. If he hadn't come, the Z government would have been completely annihilated by Lin Feng. He would have even killed the patriarch, Ziying. A young man had managed to do all of this. The crowd had always thought that such a thing was impossible, even in their wildest dreams. Sometimes, some things in this world were even crazier than people could imagine. That handsome young man in white clothes, in order to protect a beautiful woman, had come to the Z government and was killing everyone. Only a man like him was qualified to marry such a beautiful and delicate woman like Duan Xinyi. Zi Qiong could have never married her. He was nothing in comparison with Lin Feng. A single sword strike had been sufficient to kill him, he hadn't even been able to react. At that moment, the cultivator of the Xian Qi Layer was descending from the sky. Immediately after, he fell down in the corridor and stood at Ziying's side. He calmly looked at all the corpses on the ground. All right, all right, all right. That cultivator of the Xian Qi Layer was furious. He said the word, all right, thrice, raised his head and looked at Lin Feng. His eyes were filled with killing intent. Granduncle. When Ziying saw the old man, he bowed in a very respectful way. A cold light flashed in his eyes. His granduncle was a strong cultivator of the Xian Qi Layer. Since he had come, Lin Feng was inevitably going to die. Granduncle. When Ziying saw the old man, he bowed in a very respectful way. A cold light flashed in his eyes. His granduncle was a strong cultivator of the Xian Qi Layer. Since he had come, Lin Feng was inevitably going to die. That person didn't seem older than Ziying at all. He looked like he was the same as Ziying. The crowd didn't find it strange at all. The higher one's cultivation level was, the longer their lifespan became. Strong cultivators also looked younger. Extremely strong cultivators seemed to have incredible vigor and seemed like they would stay forever young. In the continent of the 9 clouds, there were some rumors that some people had cultivated to the level of immortality. Many cultivators wanted to become as strong as possible as it meant a longer life and possibly immortality. Cultivation was always the most important thing for people in the continent. You still have the face to call me granduncle? The granduncle groaned coldly. The people lying on the ground were some of the elites within the Z government. The new generation had almost been wiped out. The only one left was Zi Xia. The Z government would be left without offspring. I made a mistake. Ziying couldn't deny it, as the patriarch of the Z government, he had put them in an extremely critical situation. It was his responsibility. Even his own son had been killed. You will be punished for your mistakes, but right now. The old man's voice was piercingly cold and he was staring at Lin Feng. You are so young and you have already broken through to the 8th Ling Qi layer. You could have had a brilliant future, but now you are doomed to die here. While talking, an incredible deadly qi emerged from his body. The entire crowd started feeling cold. Lin Feng has broken through to the 8th Ling Qi layer and relying on his sword. He managed to make Zi Ying, who is at the peak of the 9th Ling Qi layer, retreat. How powerful! The crowd was astonished. They had never seen such an astounding young man. Oh really? I think that we should give it a try in order to find out whether or not I will die, said Lin Feng indifferently. His voice as calm as before, his heartbeat was steady and did not falter. Actually, Lin Feng had already broken through to the 8th Ling Qi layer. On that day when he penetrated into the Earth fusion dimension, he had broken through to the 8th Ling Qi layer from the 6th Ling Qi layer with a single leap. Before, when he didn't know how to use the Earth fusion, he relied on other mediums to challenge stronger cultivators. At that moment, he knew how to fuse with the Earth around him. Even though he was of the 8th Ling Qi layer, he could easily defeat ordinary cultivators of the 9th Ling Qi layer. If it had only been Ziying in his strange attack, Lin Feng would have already killed him. How insane! The crowd was looking at Lin Feng and the old man facing each other. Lin Feng was facing a cultivator of the Xian Qi layer and was willing to fight him. You're pretty reckless. I will show you that a cultivator of the Xian Qi layer cannot be defeated by a cultivator of the Ling Qi layer. The old man pulled up his sleeves and suddenly, grains of sand started flying through the air. Surprisingly, there was an extremely strong wind, as strong as a hurricane. It was whistling through the air. Cultivators of the Xian Qi layer can control pure qi. Pure qi is the strength which can be borrowed from heaven and earth. It can then be condensed into a form of energy. It can easily kill cultivators of the Ling Qi layer as if they were insects. The difference is too large, there is no way out. The old man raised his hand, the palm of his hand facing Lin Feng. He started absorbing purple pure qi. It looked like a dazzling purple star. Besides, the radiance of that pure qi wasn't an illusion. It was an incredible glowing brilliance. It was really the result of pure qi. Its power was incredible. Lin Feng started walking while holding his sword and pointing it towards the ground. It was diffusing a bright and cold light. It looked piercingly cold and fearless. I will try something new with my sword against your pure qi, then, we will both learn something. Lin Feng sounded cold. The crowd was astonished. He definitely deserved to be called a genius. He was shockingly intelligent. You want to test your sword against me and teach me something, said the old man while an evil smile appeared on his face. He had never heard a person of the Ling Qi layer say that they would try something new against a cultivator of the Xian Qi layer. They usually just begged for mercy. Lin Feng always did what he said though, even if it was insane, he still followed his heart. Well, you can try then. The old man's hand shook. The light from the pure qi being absorbed into the palm of his hand was dazzling to the eyes. Immediately after, he released it. The deadly purple star looked like pure destruction. Even the crowd who wasn't in the covered corridor could feel the strength of the purple star. Sword of the Rising Sun. Lin Feng quickly raised his sword high into the air. However, in the eyes of the people in the crowd, that movement looked slow and clear, like a sunrise. That sword looked like the sun rising in the east. It slowly rose into the sky, filling it with incredible power. The crowd could not believe their eyes, they had the impression that they were really looking at the red sun slowly moving up into the sky. The sword of the rising sun looked like a red rising sun. How beautiful! It looks like the rising sun. Ziling had the impression that she was dreaming. She whispered, "Sister, Lin Feng is the creator of that skill, he created it this morning while we watched the sunrise. This is how he came up with that skill. In the morning, Ziling and Lin Feng had been observing the sunrise together. At that moment, she had even sighed while complaining that Lin Feng wasn't the person with whom she wished to share that moment with. However, at that moment, she was cherishing the memory. She had the impression that she would never see such a skill again. A created skill? Ze was shivering. Cultivators, including geniuses, usually learnt and practiced skills and techniques created by their ancestors. Cultivators who could create skills were extremely rare, especially one so beautiful and inspiring. It looked like something that only a spiritually enlightened person could come up with, and it was appearing in front of the crowd. The purple light and the red light collided. An incredibly bright light filled the entire atmosphere, almost causing the crowd to be blinded. Their eyes were very painful after seeing such a bright light. It seemed like all that power stayed within the air for a long time before it eventually dispersed and the light dimmed. Lin Feng's silhouette appeared. He was holding his sword and he looked frivolous, natural and unrestrained. "Your sword of the rising sun, I really don't want to kill you. Unfortunately, you killed my family, so I have to," said the old man. Even though the old man had broken through to the Xian Qi layer, he was well aware that it was nothing exceptional. If Lin Feng continued practicing, he could easily become a really outstanding cultivator. Lin Feng would just need a few years before reaching a level higher than the old man. The Xian Qi layer wasn't Lin Feng's final goal. Some people loved Lin Feng while some others were jealous of him. However, the old man of the Z government had never seen such a talented young man. All the juniors of the Z government were far from being as strong as Lin Feng. He had always hoped that there would be a young genius in the Z government. Unfortunately, there had never been one, and the first time that he saw such an incredible genius, it wasn't his offspring but an enemy of the Z government. The old man wanted to slap Ziying repeatedly in the face. Instead of making friends with Lin Feng, he had become his enemy. How ignorant. Such a thing was unpardonable. "Come on, attack," said Lin Feng, sounding cold and detached. "All right, let's see what you have." The old man also sounded calm. He started moving and in a flash, he landed in front of Lin Feng. His hand was enveloped in purple pure qi which was already slashing towards Lin Feng's body. The hearts of the people in the crowd were pounding. Someone like Lin Feng, who dared confront a cultivator of the Xian Qi layer while at the Ling Qi layer, actually existed. Scorching sword. Lin Feng said that in a low voice. An extremely resplendent light emerged from his sword. It was filled with endless explosive force. The light diffused by that sword was radiant and awe-inspiring. It was the light of a scorching sun. It illuminated everything. It was extremely powerful. That was the scorching sword. Psh, psh. Deadly qi was burning around the sword. That attack was the result of Lin Feng's knowledge of cultivation. He had used his deadly qi to create this skill. The light emitted by that sword was as radiant as the sun, and the sword moved at the speed of light. Boom! A terrifying qi filled the atmosphere. When the scorching sword approached, the old man of the Z government retreated. A cultivator of the Xian Qi layer was retreating when facing Lin Feng. Surprisingly, he had moved back. However, it was only a small step backwards and then a side step. Dark shadow. Lin Feng didn't stop his sword attack and he used the second level of the deadly cross shadow, the dark shadow. His body vanished and transformed into a shadow. It seemed like he had disappeared. Back in the days, when Lin Feng was fighting to save Duan Xianyi, he had used his skilled dark shadow skill, but he was unable to transform into a perfect shadow. However, at that moment, since he knew how to fuse with the earth, when he used his dark shadow skill, his body really transformed into a perfect shadow, completely invisible. Only his terrifying strength was left. "Purple Summit," whispered the old man. When the old man sensed all of Lin Feng's strength, a hideous expression appeared on his face. An incredible purple light appeared. It was a purple light made of pure qi. Psh. Psh. Lin Feng's sword penetrated into the pure qi. The old man's facial expression slightly changed. His body was just like an illusion, he flickered and disappeared. He then landed down farther down the corridor. He had retreated a much larger distance this time. The old man of the Z government had, once again, moved back because of Lin Feng. But Lin Feng's facial expression didn't reveal pride at all. He didn't chase after him. He turned around and looked at Ziying, who was now much closer to Lin Feng than the old man. Lin Feng's eyes filled with murderous flames. Ziying's facial expression changed drastically. His heart started pounding furiously. Lin Feng's body moved once again, there was no longer anything to stop him. At the foot of the Golden Z Mountain, a group of armored horses were galloping at full speed. At the foot of the Golden Z Mountain, a group of armored horses were galloping at full speed. The group was composed of about 30 people. The majority of them was wearing bronze masks which covered their faces entirely, but once in a while, it was possible to notice they all had tense expressions. They were releasing strong qi as they rode. These horses were surprisingly, all qi xie armored horses. They were people from the Shuiyu country. The person leading the group wasn't like all the others. Surprisingly, it was a girl, she looked delicate and was wearing white clothes. Even though a fine veil was covering her face, she looked holy and pure. The way she moved her body gave the impression that she was floating through the air like a celestial spirit. It gave the impression that she was not of this world. That woman at the front of the group was Meng Qing. Her clothes were white like snow and she was floating in the air like a celestial being. The group of Qi Xie cavalry was following Meng Qing. They were the celestial sword Qi Xie unit. Over the past days, after Lin Feng had traveled into the Mou country, he had heard no news about the battle. After the battle, a group of Qi Xie cavalry followed Meng Qing and went looking for Lin Feng. They had been tracking him for days. By coincidence, they had learned from the Ziwei mountain village, that Lin Feng was at the Z government. Besides, Meng Qing and the others had been galloping at full speed over that huge distance without rest. At the same time, outside of the Z government, Lin Feng was standing in front of the entrance to the forbidden area. He had just made the old man retreat in the blink of an eye, but he didn't stop there. He had grabbed Duan Xianye's hand and had jumped toward Ziying carrying the princess at his side. "No!" Ziying shouted extremely loudly. Ziying was the patriarch of the Z government sect and he seemed to be pitifully weak when compared with Lin Feng. Lin Feng made him look like a weak cultivator who couldn't withstand a single attack. Besides, there had been less than a second between the moment when Lin Feng stopped fighting against the old man and the moment when he had appeared right in front of Ziying. It seemed like he could kill Ziying at any moment. Ziying's heart was filled with endless resentment. He was the patriarch of the Z government, he had reached the peak of the 9th Ling Qi layer and was respected in the entire region, there was nobody who wasn't reverent and respectful to him. But at that moment, Lin Feng, a teenager who had come alone, had killed the members of the Z government and was treating him, Ziying, like he was nothing. He was moving to kill him while still fighting with the senior cultivator of the Z government. A terrifying purple illusion emerged, Ziying's entire body was covered by the purple qi of that illusion. He violently raised his fist with all the energy he had remaining. Sword of the Setting Sun. He was holding his sword in the air and sliced through the atmosphere towards the ground. His sword was not dazzling, though, it gave the impression of desolation and loneliness. That hot-blooded genius, that majestically strong cultivator, also had moments of loneliness and desolation, moments similar to a setting sun. Sword of the Setting Sun was filled with a deadly and lonely qi. Lin Feng's Sword of the Rising Sun was swift and violent. His scorching sword could illuminate everything, but it also destroyed everything it illuminated. Lin Feng's sword of the setting sun seemed like it refused to be flashy, there was nothing beautiful about it, no matter how dazzling the sword used to be, it all faded into darkness. Ling could feel the power of the sword. He used to enjoy a great reputation throughout the whole region, and at that moment, he was being humiliated by Lin Feng. It was the opposite of what he was used to. Ying's heart was pounding. The brilliance of his attack was fading. It seemed like under Lin Feng's sword, anything that gave out a bright and flashy light was being suppressed. When Lin Feng's sword of the setting sun reached the ground, Ying slowly collapsed. The hearts of the people in the crowd were pounding. The patriarch of the Z government had been killed by a single sword strike. How strong, people in the crowd felt that they were paralyzed. Ying had also been killed by Lin Feng. What a powerful young man. Boom! An incredible purple light emerged around the old man's body and filled the air. Lin Feng had made him retreat, and in that moment, he killed Ying. In front of the old man's eyes, Lin Feng had killed the patriarch of the Z government, Ying. It wasn't only about Lin Feng having killed his offspring, it was also a shocking humiliation. Lin Feng made the old man seem completely useless. I will dismember you into 1,000 pieces. The old man's face looked hideous and piercingly cold. He then jumped back into the corridor. The entire corridor was shaking as if it was going to collapse from the pressure he emitted. Dismember me into 1,000 pieces. Lin Feng's facial expression was cold. He then continued, when you came, you said I would never have my turn, I could not kill him because I was dead already. You will be buried here with him, said the old man while taking another step. The ground shook, making Lin Feng's heart shake as well. The old man was furious, the old man of the Xian Qi layer was enraged. Well, once again, we will have to see what the final result will be. Lin Feng put Duan Xianyi behind him and moved forwards, releasing his battle energy. Everybody who was present could clearly and distinctly sense Lin Feng's battle energy. Even though he was facing a strong cultivator of the Xian Qi layer, he was not backing down. He was truly fearless. There was only battle energy burning around him, and his heart was filled with ardor. This was a true cultivator. He was extremely determined. How could he not be strong when he had such determination? Lin Feng hadn't become that strong only because he had high natural talent, it was also thanks to his willpower and determination. All right, shouted the old man when he sensed Lin Feng's battle energy. He then started running, and an incredible energy emerged from his fist. Purple pure qi rushed insanely through the air straight towards Lin Feng. Deadly sword. Lin Feng was using his deadly sword while in fusion with the earth, it was thus infinitely stronger than before. That sword was releasing deadly qi when in perfect fusion with the energy of the earth. Boom! The purple pure qi and Lin Feng's sword collided. An incredible force oppressed Lin Feng's sword. The pressure from his sword felt like he was colliding with a mountain. It was extremely heavy. Cultivators of the Xian Qi layer used genuine pure qi, which was condensed and used directly in their attacks. This was infinitely more powerful than the pure qi used by the lower layers of cultivation. The old man shouted furiously, he had also used as much of his pure qi as possible in his attack. Even though it was only one attack, Lin Feng hadn't been able to resist. His forearm was severely injured under the pressure and his body had been blown backwards. You overestimate your own abilities, said the old man coldly. Immediately after, he started running and the ground trembled under his feet. The purple pure qi around the old man's body transformed into a spiral shape and shot from the old man's fist. He launched another insanely powerful fist attack straight towards Lin Feng. Boom! Another explosive collision. Lin Feng groaned in pain. He grabbed Duan Xianye's hand and moved backwards. The old man looked like a terrifying purple demon. This is the difference between the Xian Qi layer and the Ling Qi layer. They cannot fight each other. Between the Ling Qi layer and the Xian Qi layer, there are too many changes within the body, thought Lin Feng. Battles were important to gain experience. Battling against a cultivator of the Xian Qi layer was also a way to challenge himself and gain experience. He would sooner or later try and break through to the Xian Qi layer. The experience of how a Xian Qi layer opponent fights would be useful after breaking through. Whatever, it would be bad if we let it just end with only this. A tremendous amount of battle energy started burning around Lin Feng's body. He was fixedly staring at the old man. No need to look at me that way. I am at the Xian Qi layer, you have no chance. You will not even be able to touch me, you can only wait to die. The old man's voice was cold and indifferent. The purple pure qi surrounding his body was getting denser and denser. Oh, is that so? Replied Lin Feng in a low voice and then suddenly disappeared. Dark shadow, he transformed into a shadow. Do you think that will help you? Said the old man while smiling coldly. The senses of a cultivator at the Xian Qi layer were extremely developed. Even though Lin Feng's skill was extremely powerful, after all, it was only powered by the strength of the Ling Qi layer. It had not reached its maximum potential. A rumbling noise spread through the atmosphere, which was illuminated by purple qi. However, at that moment, a sword immediately pierced into that purple qi. A dark shadow was holding that sword. Give me your sword. The old man was smiling coldly. He then shook his hand and in a flash, the purple qi wrapped around Lin Feng's sword and pressed it against Lin Feng's throat. There was nowhere left for him to go. However, Lin Feng suddenly appeared in front of the old man. He then said in a cold tone, who said that a cultivator of the Ling Qi layer couldn't hurt a cultivator of the Xian Qi layer. Deadly Cross Shadow. When Lin Feng used this skill, he transformed his body into a sword which could pierce heaven and earth. He raised both of his hands into the air and an incredibly bright cross appeared. It was terrifyingly quick, so quick it was impossible to believe. A cross was moving through the air above the crowd. It seemed like it was something ancient, but the cross had only just appeared. When Lin Feng finished, the old man understood that the situation had become extremely dangerous. In a flash, he released his purple pure qi and started to move backwards, but it was too late. The purple pure qi in front of him was extinguished under Lin Feng's deadly cross shadow. The cross collided with the old man and his clothes tore apart, his flesh was torn and there was a huge cross-shaped mark across his torso. It had the same brilliance as the cross that rushed through the air. However, the sight was horrible, his flesh and bones were visible, the wound was terrifying. If he had been even a little bit weaker or reacted slightly late, the old man would have died. That cross shadow almost pierced through his chest and killed him. The crowd was also looking at the old man's chest. They could clearly see the bloody cross which was gushing with blood. They were in shock. The crowd was also looking at the old man's chest. They could clearly see the bloody cross which was gushing with blood. They were in shock. Who said that a cultivator of the Ling Qi layer couldn't hurt one of the Xian Qi layer? If Lin Feng said that, it was because he believed otherwise and that he knew that he had the power to prove it. Relying on his strength of the Ling Qi layer, not only had he hurt the old man, but he had actually severely injured him. He had nearly killed him. The crowd found the whole situation hard to believe. The old man lowered his head and could clearly see the cross mark and the blood from his chest. The old man's facial expression was so hideous that no words could describe it. Pure qi emerged, the blood flowing out of his wound solidified and his wound was instantly sealed. The old man raised his head and looked at Lin Feng. His eyes were filled with endless hatred. He had never wanted to kill someone so much before meeting Lin Feng. I want to dismantle your entire body piece by piece before killing you. The old man's voice sounded extremely evil. Humph. Lin Feng groaned coldly. He moved back to his initial position, grabbed Duan Xianye's hand, then slightly moved back again, and at that moment the old man's facial expression drastically changed. Don't you dare. At that moment, behind Lin Feng, there was the gigantic statue which was where the entrance into the forbidden area was hidden. It was still open from the previous rituals. When Lin Feng saw the old man's facial expression, he smiled coldly. He then moved like a shadow and disappeared. He grabbed Duan Xinyi and both of them immediately vanished. They were both thrown into the forbidden area. The old man's facial expression grew darker. Lin Feng had entered the forbidden area. The old man's silhouette flickered and he immediately tried to follow them, but when he tried to enter the forbidden area, an extremely fierce sword energy emerged. His body was blown backwards. A loud rumbling noise filled the air. The door of the forbidden area closed itself. The old man was astonished. Gotcha! The old man's hands emitted cracking noises as he clenched his fists. He was fixedly staring at the entrance to the forbidden area. The thing he feared the most had happened. A moment before, when he was near Lin Feng, he didn't make it obvious, but he tried to make Lin Feng move back away from the forbidden area. He had done this so that nobody would suspect anything about the forbidden area. He didn't want to let Lin Feng enter it, but in the end, Lin Feng had noticed. If the opponent hadn't been Lin Feng, he wouldn't have been that worried, but Lin Feng had extremely high natural talent and could already injure him. If Lin Feng stayed in the forbidden area for a few years without coming out, he would never have the opportunity to capture Lin Feng. Besides, with his high natural talent, Lin Feng, after having stayed for a few years, would certainly be able to kill the old man. In the forbidden area, there were mystical objects. Even though the Z government had never really understood these things, maybe Lin Feng, as talented as he was, would be able to understand them, and maybe then, he wouldn't even need years. The old man was still in front of the entrance to the forbidden area, remaining motionless. He remained silent while staring at the door. He was lost in thought. The crowd didn't hurry to leave either. Actually, they were all very curious to know what the forbidden area was hiding. Was it really a graveyard for their ancestors? The Z government had a great reputation in the entire region, so nobody would have dared to force their way into the forbidden area. Besides, the other cultivators of the Xian Qi layer in the region were not that interested in the forbidden area of the Z government. After all, with their strength, the Z government could only enjoy such a reputation within a limited area, that's all. They were nothing in comparison with the genuinely strong cultivators of MOU. Inside of the forbidden area, the air was thick and oppressive. The atmosphere was entirely silent. The silence was somewhat dreadful as well. There was a dark purple light shining on the scenery. A purple light filled the entire atmosphere of the forbidden area. Duan Xinyi was firmly and tightly holding Lin Feng's hand as if she feared that Lin Feng might let go. However, her beautiful eyes were filled with curiosity, while observing the forbidden area. She was slightly scared, but not much, because Lin Feng was by her side. Xinyi, have the people of the Z government told you anything about the forbidden area? Asked Lin Feng. Never, I almost never talked to them, said Duan Xinyi while shaking her head. Let's go deeper inside and see, said Lin Feng while pulling on Duan Xinyi's hand. The purple light enabled them to see their surroundings. The two of them walked for a while and then, suddenly, the purple light became much brighter. Everything which was surrounding them could now clearly be seen. The ground under Lin Feng and Duan Xinyi's feet was made of clean and well-cut stone. The walls were on both sides were clear-cut stone of high quality. While they were moving forwards, the path was getting larger and larger. After a while, Duan Xinyi and Lin Feng were astonished when they saw what was in front of them. There was a lake, but the water of that lake was purple. There were small ripples unceasingly forming on the top. That lake was only small. They could still see the other side in the distance from where they were. It was brightly lit on the other side too. They could see beautiful stone from a gigantic palace. There's a purple lake and a palace. Lin Feng was astonished. He was fixedly staring at the lake. Surprisingly, it looked like Xi Ying's spirit. What surprised Lin Feng was the water, which seemed like it was boiling and foaming. "Let's go closer and see," said Lin Feng to Duan Xinyi. Duan Xinyi slightly nodded. Lin Feng tightly held Duan Xinyi's hand and then jumped over to the next side, aiming to land in front of the palace. However, at the moment when Lin Feng was jumping over the lake, an incredible sound spread through the air. Suddenly, the lake seemed to rise into the air, whirlpools appeared and sucked Lin Feng and Duan Yi into the water. Everything was happening so fast. They were dumbstruck. Lin Feng was astonished and shocked. It seemed like the purple lake had a life of its own. It had immediately caught them and trapped them inside it. Lin Feng would have never thought that such a thing was possible. Duan Xinyi shouted in surprise. She was firmly holding Lin Feng's hand as if she was going to die if she didn't. Both of them were swallowed by the lake. At that moment, the lake seemed to be excited and roared loudly. Purple light was unceasingly filling the atmosphere, moving straight to Lin Feng and Duan Xinyi. At that moment, the clothes of Lin Feng and Duan Xinyi disappeared and melted in the lake. They were astonished to see that their clothes were actually melting. In a flash, their clothes had entirely melted and disappeared. Fortunately, their entire bodies were completely submerged in the water, otherwise, the situation would have been awkward as well as dangerous. The situation was so strange that even if the situation was awkward, they didn't have time to pay attention to that. Duan Xinyi and Lin Feng only had their heads out of the water. They were tightly holding each other's hand. At that moment, the purple liquid moved towards them and penetrated into their bodies and spread through their entire body. The purple liquid was then penetrating into their legs, arms and bones. It was unceasingly penetrating into their body as if it wanted to occupy all the available space. It seemed like the liquid could enter from every opening. "Lin Feng, I'm in pain." Duan Xinyi's face was deathly pale. She had the feeling her body was going to swell and explode. She was firmly holding Lin Feng's hand and then, finally, she felt that the pressure in her arms was decreasing. Lin Feng looked gloomy. He was also in a great deal of pain. That liquid was attacking his body from the inside. At that moment, an incredible and colossal qi emerged. Illusions appeared behind Lin Feng and Duan Xinyi's bodies. Surprisingly, some small black doors appeared. There were 3 doors. They looked like they had existed since the beginning of time. Sealed doors. Lin Feng was astonished. These were sealed doors just like those that the members of the Duan clan had with their spirit, the blood spirit. Boom, boom, boom. The 3 doors vibrated and then it seemed like Duan Xinyi's body was sealed by the sealed doors, as if they were sealing everything. The sealed door qi was spreading through the atmosphere and surprisingly the purple liquid stopped penetrating her body. It was slowly being forced out of her body. The sealed doors prevented the purple liquid from flowing into her body. Duan Xinyi slowly closed her eyes but she was still breathing smoothly. Lin Feng slightly loosened his grip on her hand. She had just fainted, it was nothing serious. However, the purple liquid was still penetrating into Lin Feng's body and it was extremely painful. However, at that moment, what seemed to be a familiar sensation invaded his body which made Lin Feng shiver. Behind his back, an illusion appeared. It was his snake spirit that had appeared behind his back. The little snake was sound asleep. Rohar. Rohar. At that moment, his snake spirit roared loudly, the noise sounding like a dragon chant. The snake opened its mouth and turned into an endless black hole swallowing everything in its way. An endless quantity of purple liquid was being swallowed by the snake. The stomach of the snake was growing bigger and bigger. Immediately after, a loud roar spread through the air again. Suddenly, additional heads were sprouting from the body of the snake. They all roared and swallowed more purple liquid at the same time. The purple liquid was an even darker shade of purple when absorbed by the snake. SSSSS. 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 The chant of the dragons was unceasingly spreading through the atmosphere as if it was echoing from ancient times. At that moment, Lin Feng's snake had become gigantic. It didn't even look like a snake anymore, it looked like a dragon. In the continent of the 9 clouds, it was known for some dragons to have multiple heads. His snake had 6 heads. At that moment, Lin Feng's heart was violently pounding. Was this his snake spirit? In comparison with before, his snake was completely different, it had completely changed. His snake used to be small, it looked very weak. But at that moment, it looked like an ancient and powerful dragon. It looked brutal, strong and majestic. SSSSSS, SSSSSS. The 6 heads of the snake were singing the chant of the dragons. The snake then rose all of its heads and uttered a long roar as if it was looking down at all the other living creatures. As far as the purple lake was concerned, it had completely vanished without a trace. It had been completely swallowed by the 6-headed dragon. Lin Feng's snake spirit had absorbed the entire purple lake as if there was nothing in the world that a dragon couldn't eat. Lin Feng couldn't imagine how his snake spirit has transformed to look like a dragon. Even though it couldn't be described as gigantic, it was still been able to swallow the entire purple lake. Lin Feng couldn't believe his eyes. Lin Feng raised his hand and saw a purple light flashing around it. At that moment, Lin Feng's purple energy was much stronger than that of Ziying. My spirit transformed itself again, but it's much stronger than my previous ice spirit. That's a good thing. Lin Feng was slightly smiling, but suddenly, he noticed that a naked young woman was in front of him. She looked so lithe and graceful. Lin Feng was filled with endless desire. Duan Xinyi was in front of him and was completely naked. Her skin was delicate and white, the same could be said about the other parts of her body. In a flash, Lin Feng felt like he was overcome with a fever. He lowered his head and looked at his own body. Lin Feng had the impression that his cheeks were burning. He was also naked. The purple lake had melted their clothes. Lin Feng turned his head away. He couldn't look at Duan Xinyi anymore. He feared that he wouldn't be able to control himself if he did. Even though his determination and willpower as a cultivator was extremely strong, Lin Feng was a virgin in his previous life and was still a virgin in his new life, and an incredibly beautiful woman was naked before him. His heart was violently and brutally pounding. Lin Feng quickly removed clothes from his Na stone. It was good that he had his Na stone, otherwise he would not have had any clothes. Lin Feng put on his clothes and then walked towards Duan Xinyi. He then threw clothes over her to cover her body and then finally dared look again. However, Lin Feng suddenly saw 2 beautiful eyes that were wide open in shock. She wasn't blinking at all. She was fixedly staring at him. At that moment, Lin Feng wished he could find a hole to escape this awkward situation. Duan Xinyi then looked at her body and realized what had happened. Her face became bright red, even her ears had completely turned red. I didn't look on purpose, said Lin Feng, who felt really awkward. When he saw Duan Xinyi's red face, he felt even more awkward. Duan Xinyi sighed. She was sitting on the ground holding the clothes in front of her body to hide herself. Each of her movements to cover herself was enough to make a man go insane. Do you have more clothes? Asked Duan Xinyi shyly. Even though Lin Feng had a good sense of hearing, his mind was still in a dazed state. He just slightly nodded and took out more clothes out from the Na stone and handed them to Duan Xinyi. He then said, I'm going over there to see what is inside the palace. While speaking, Lin Feng abruptly turned around and walked towards the bright light in the front of the palace. Duan Xinyi looked shy. She was blankly staring at Lin Feng's back for a while, and then a smile appeared on her face. She looked very sweet. Her smile would have made anyone's heart race. Lin Feng didn't see Duan Xinyi's sweet smile. He continued until he arrived inside the palace. He was stupefied by what he saw. The palace was extremely spacious and brightly lit. Lin Feng didn't know what material had been used to build it, but it looked like a luxurious palace that was built in ancient times. At the front of the palace was a sculpture. It was a motionless silhouette meditating on the ground. A purple light was surrounding the statue. Beside the statue, there was a snake in a curled position. Uncurled, that snake, from head to tail, probably had a length of 60 meters. It was gigantic. Besides, to Lin Feng's left, there was a stone slab, and on that stone slab was a corpse. That corpse was already a skeleton. On the side of that skeleton was a book. Lin Feng walked towards the skeleton and grabbed the book to see what was written inside. The book seemed to be a diary. My name is Zi Qian, I am a famous person in Sangzhou. I unintentionally came to this nameless mountain and entered this place. I discovered that it is a graveyard for extremely strong cultivators. Graveyard? Lin Feng's pupils shrank. This place was a graveyard for extremely strong cultivators. His heart was pounding. He then continued reading the small book in which Zi Qian had written the tales from his life. So this place was found by Zi Qian, the first ancestor of the Zi government. Besides, this place was a graveyard for extremely strong cultivators. This place was so full of power that it was a forbidden area for other cultivators. That purple lake was surprisingly human blood. It contained the strength and power of a blood spirit. The blood could penetrate into people's bodies and would dissolve their bodies from the inside. The process was so the blood could dissolve the body of the host it entered. The powerful blood in the lake was also hereditary. The direct descendants of the Zi government all possessed a purple spirit but were actually all very weak. They became much stronger only after having absorbed some of the purple blood from the lake. It was a kind of baptism. Only after that baptism, their spirit would be in harmony with their body. It also developed their natural talent and accelerated their cultivation. The spirit of the Zi government members could also be classified as a blood spirit, but their ancestors had only relied on the blood from the purple lake to make their spirit become the purple spirit. Even after having undergone a baptism in the purple lake, their spirit could never be as powerful as the blood spirits which could be directly inherited. For example, Duan Xinyi had inherited her spirit from the blood of her ancestors. All the Duan clan members had inherited the blood spirit and gained strength from it. The Zi government members could only undergo the baptism of the purple lake on the day of their wedding. As a rule, that was the only time when they could enter the forbidden area. This was also Zi Qian's choice. That was the only way to enjoy its benefits. Entering the forbidden area as a young adult was best because if a person was too young they wouldn't be able to endure the pain, while older people would have wasted time and lost their potential already. All the members of the Zi government wanted to undergo the baptism of the purple lake. However, Lin Feng and Duan Xinye's bodies had both rejected it. Duan Xinye's body had rejected it because she possessed an extremely strong and powerful blood spirit whose sealed doors had prevented her body from absorbing the purple liquid. As far as Lin Feng was concerned, the purple liquid had been entirely swallowed by his snake spirit. His snake spirit had absorbed all the strength of the purple blood. Lin Feng turned around and looked at the huge snake beneath the statue. Lin Feng was shaking. It wasn't a statue, it was a real snake. The purple lake was actually formed from the blood of the snake. What a strong and powerful beast. Its blood could fill an entire lake and it harnesses the strength of blood. Besides, it's been there for so many years and the blood was still alive. Outside of the forbidden area, the crowd was still waiting patiently. The old man of the Zi government was waiting, but the door leading to the forbidden area remained closed, not moving at all. Not only the old man but everybody who belonged to the Zi government was gathered there. They were all waiting for Lin Feng. The corridor was packed with strong cultivators. A rumbling noise could be heard and the ground started shaking. The crowd was astonished. They looked down the mountain and saw a group of silhouettes riding armored horses. They were galloping at full speed and looked extremely majestic. The leader of the group was a woman. She was wearing white clothes and her face was covered with a fine veil. Even though they could only see her silhouette, everybody was fascinated by that woman. "There is another incredibly beautiful woman," thought people in the crowd while their heartbeats accelerated. They didn't know who these people were and why they were coming straight towards the Z government. Their horses neighed, and while looking full of vitality, the horses all jumped directly into the corridor. They looked majestic, imposing and awe-inspiring. How impressive! Could it be that they are lost? The crowd was stupefied. Surprisingly, these people had directly entered the corridor. Everybody started looking at the woman who was leading the group. They also didn't know who she was and why she had come. They really wanted to see her face to see if she was comparable with Duan Xinyi, or at least, to see what she was like beneath her veil. "Where is Lin Feng?" said the young woman. The crowd was astonished. She had come because of Lin Feng. Once again, everything was because of Lin Feng. "Where is Lin Feng?" said Meng Qin. Her voice sounded cold. The woman was like an iceberg, cold and unmoving. "Where is Lin Feng?" said Meng Qin. Her voice sounded cold. The woman was like an iceberg, cold and unmoving. "Huh." The old man slowly turned around and looked at the young girl who was acting arrogantly. He then said coldly, "Why are you looking for Lin Feng?" "Where is Lin Feng?" asked Meng Qin again. Her voice was still very cold. She didn't answer the old man's question and ignored him. At that moment, all she wanted to know was where Lin Feng was. The Celestial Sword Unit also looked at the old man. At that moment, the old man felt their chi filling the atmosphere and oppressing him. Humph. The old man pulled up his sleeves and his facial expression looked piercingly cold. Not so long before, Lin Feng had slaughtered his family. Lin Feng left a cross-shaped mark on the old man's chest, humiliating him, and at that moment, another group of insane people had come looking for Lin Feng. The old man felt completely humiliated. "I killed Lin Feng," said the old man coldly. A group of teenagers dared to act so arrogantly, that angered the old man. "You killed him," repeated Meng Qin, her heart was pounding. "Indeed, I killed him. Everybody here watched and cheered as I killed him," said the old man while smiling coldly. Meng Qin remained silent, and then suddenly a murderous light flashed through her eyes. These cold and expressionless eyes had revealed emotion for the first time. Her body started shaking and shivering as if she had just heard a terrible horror story. The Celestial Sword Unit remained silent as well. A tremendous thunder spread through the atmosphere and an incredibly bright light filled the air around the Celestial Sword Unit. An endless quantity of chi emerged and created a hurricane. At that moment, the entire crowd had the feeling that they were suffocating from the pressure. How strong! The weakest person of that group is at the third Ling Chi layer. What kind of people are they? What about Lin Feng? Who is he really? When the crowd felt that oppressive chi, their hearts started pounding. "You will all die." An incredibly loud and mighty voice filled the air. The powerful chi spread through the air. The Chi Xie armored cavalry started rampaging. Blood filled the air. The Chi Xie cavalry rushed through the crowd, and in a flash, the entire palace had become a bloodbath. They killed everyone without hesitation. Horrible shrieks filled the air. Blood was continuously filling the air. Meng Qin was staring at the sky. Nobody knew what she was thinking. Sometimes she didn't even know what she was thinking. She only knew that her heart felt painful, extremely painful. Her experience of life was very limited. She had been in the outside world for a very short time. She used to live alone with her mother on the Black Wind Mountain. Someday, under a bright moon, Lin Feng appeared on a stone at the foot of a mountain. He had then taken her and shown her the outside world. At that moment, Lin Feng filled her memories and thoughts. She could see Lin Feng when he was angry, when he was fighting, when he looked natural and unrestrained, but also when he smiled and giggled at her. A teardrop fell from her cheek onto the ground. Her thoughts were only of Lin Feng. Meng Qin usually never showed her emotions, but at that moment, she was crying. Her heart felt so incredibly painful. At that moment, the old man saw the Qi Xia troops killing the members of the Z government. His facial expression became ice-cold. A purple qi emerged as he jumped up in the air. However, at the moment when he tried to attack, an extremely piercing coldness enveloped his body and blocked him. That coldness was piercing through to his bones. Not only the old man, but everybody else could feel that immense coldness. It seemed like the entire world was about to freeze. The fog in the air gradually solidified and snowflakes started falling from the sky. The atmosphere was freezing. How cold! The crowd was shaking from head to toe. Immediately after, they looked at the young woman, whose clothes were as white as snow. At that moment, Meng Qin was really like an iceberg. She wanted to freeze everything, including her own heart. Die, Meng Qin's voice was low as it resonated in the entire atmosphere. A hurricane then emerged in the air. It was surrounding Meng Qin and her white clothes were fluttering. At that moment, the fine veil on her face flew away in the wind. It flew far away, revealing her beautiful face. At that moment, it seemed like time had stopped. Her beauty was breathtaking to the extent that people didn't dare look at her. She was incredibly beautiful, she was the incarnation of beauty. They had all thought that Duan Xinyi was extremely beautiful and nobody could rival her beauty, but at that moment, the beautiful girl wearing white clothes had appeared. She looked like a celestial being. She looked like an ice goddess. She made the people around her feel worthless. There was such a beautiful creature in the world, that was a catastrophe for all other human beings. When Ziling and her sister saw Meng Qin, they felt infinitely inferior, especially Zi. She had the feeling that she was absolutely worthless. She came to look for Lin Feng. What is the nature of their relationship? Whispered Ziling. Duan Xinyi was already very beautiful and also in love with Lin Feng. Now, another extremely beautiful woman had appeared and was looking for Lin Feng. Meng Qin had jumped from her horse up into the air and in a flash landed in front of the old man. The old man was also astonished by Meng Qin's beauty, but what astonished him the most was her strength. He had the sensation that his entire body was about to freeze and even his soul could freeze. He was regretting that he underestimated these young cultivators and said that he killed Lin Feng. He released some purple pure qi and shouted like a madman. He wanted to attack with all his power. Frozen heart, said Meng Qin in a low voice. She raised a finger. The old man was astonished and shaking from head to toe. Blood immediately splashed from his mouth. One attack had been enough to severely injure him. When the crowd saw that, they were all shocked and felt despair in their hearts. They were all blankly staring at Meng Qin. Not only was Meng Qin extremely beautiful, but her power was also more monstrous than that of Lin Feng. Meng Qin released piercingly cold ice qi. That ice qi came from the depths of her body. It seemed like an endless powerful qi was being released. The old man's purple pure qi was frozen solid. Immediately after, the energy around his body was also frozen. Then, the coldness immediately penetrated into his body. He was entirely frozen, from head to toe. His body was covered with a layer of ice. He was buried in ice. Then, her soft hand slapped against his face. Boom! The old man's body flew through the air and crashed against the wall of the palace. The ice enveloping his body was smashed into pieces. After that, a huge amount of blood gushed from his mouth. He had a dull and humiliated look in his eyes. The old man had never thought that he would get so badly beaten, especially by a young woman. The old man looked at the crowd below. The Qi Xie troops were massacring the people of the Z government. It was a pure one-sided massacre. The Z government is defeated. This is a crushing defeat. The old man felt hopeless and desperate. Because he said one lie and underestimated a small group of young people, the Z government was being annihilated and its people slaughtered. The old man's pride was being trampled. Boom! A fist full of ice crashed into his body. Around Meng Qing's body, there were icicles which contained deadly ice chi. They were floating around her body. If it landed on the old man's body, he would end up gravely injured. The old man was blown away and crashed onto the wall of the palace once again. The old man looked absolutely hopeless. He hasn't died. Lin Feng hasn't died. He has entered into the forbidden area. The old man shouted. When Meng Qing heard that, her body stopped shaking. Immediately after, she looked at the crowd down the corridor and said coldly, "Speak." That one word was clear to the crowd and was their only salvation. If they didn't speak the truth, they would all be massacred. He hasn't died. He has entered into the forbidden area. Everybody started to shout one after the other, agreeing with the old man. Meng Qing, whose heart was broken, suddenly felt relieved. She took a deep breath. "Can you let me off now?" asked the old man who was begging Meng Qing not to kill him. He was terrified of this young woman. "It's too late," said Meng Qing while shaking her head. Cold chi surrounded the old man's body. He was shaking from head to toe. Meng Qing's silhouette vanished and her fist immediately crashed onto the old man's body. It released an endless amount of cold energy. It had the power to freeze everything, including lives. The old man's body was entirely frozen, his eyes were closed and immediately after, he fell from the air, silently and breathless. The old man of the Z government, a strong cultivator of the Xian Qi layer, had been killed. At the same time, the battle within the corridor was already finished. The Z government members that had gathered inside the corridor were annihilated. The crowd was blankly gazing into the distance and remained silent. The Z government enjoyed an influential reputation in the entire region and in a single day, it had been annihilated, because they made enemies of one person, Lin Feng. Meng Qing landed back onto the ground. She looked imposing and domineering. Cold chi was surrounding her body. That cold chi transformed into a brilliant aura. Meng Qing's body was covered by a layer of ice. All the people who were near her had the impression that they were going to freeze if they stayed close, so they all moved back. Even the Qi Xie troops were moving away. Meng Qing landed back onto the ground. She looked imposing and domineering. Cold chi was surrounding her body. That cold chi transformed into a brilliant aura. Meng Qing's body was covered by a layer of ice. All the people who were near her had the impression that they were going to freeze if they stayed close, so they all moved back. Even the Qi Xie troops were moving away. "She's so cold," thought many people when they saw her. Only Lin Feng could give birth to feelings from such a cold heart like that of Meng Qing. Meng Qing moved in front of the statue and said coldly, "Is this the entrance to the forbidden area?" "Indeed, this is the entrance of the forbidden area of the Z government," said some people from the crowd while nodding. Nobody dared speak without being spoken to, they were afraid of offending Meng Qing and the others. If they got angry again, the remaining crowd would suffer the same fate as the people of the Z government. Meng Qing was extremely strong, she easily killed the old man so she could kill them even more easily. Meng Qing was looking at the entrance of the forbidden area. She slightly raised her hand. She condensed some cold chi onto the palm of her hand. Immediately after, she rushed forward and insanely bombarded the door with the palm of her hand. Boom! 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 The ground was unceasingly shaking and the sound was echoing through the atmosphere. The door of the forbidden area was still closed. The statue hadn't moved at all either. Boom! 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 Meng Qin was unceasingly bombarding the entrance of the forbidden area. She looked as cold as before. Her facial expression hadn't changed at all. Finally, after having tried many times, Meng Qin gave up. She turned around and asked the crowd, "How do I open that door?" "It requires the blood of a direct descendant from the Z government. You need to put some blood in the hole of the statue and then it will open, but now the Z government is all ready," said a person in the crowd. Immediately after, that person looked at the corpses on the ground. The direct descendants of the Z government had all been killed. There wasn't a single member left alive. Blood. Meng Qin looked pensive. She looked at the old man, waved her hand and ice penetrated into the old man's corpse. Frozen blood was removed from the corpse. Meng Qin waved her hand again and then the frozen blood moved into the hole of the statue. The blood melted in a flash, but as before, nothing happened. Meng Qin looked pensive. She looked at the person who had just spoken. That person suddenly sensed that his body had gotten very rigid. That beautiful woman, who looked like a celestial being, could really make other people freeze with only a glance. Common people like them couldn't touch her, they could only enjoy looking at her from a distance. Maybe the door will not open itself again. Otherwise, after Lin Feng went inside, the granduncle of the Z government would have chased him inside, he wouldn't have waited outside, explained the person in the crowd and continued. Besides, all the people of the Z government went into the forbidden area previously, nothing happened to them, they came back without outside assistance, maybe they control it from inside. How much time did the people of the Z government spend inside? Asked Meng Qin. When she heard that nothing happened to the people who went inside previously, she suddenly felt even more relieved. Nothing bad would happen to Lin Feng, that was the most important thing. I'm not sure about that. Some months, some spent years. Months, years, whispered Meng Qin. She turned around and said to the Qi Xie troops, "If you do not want to wait, you can leave." All of them remained silent and motionless. None of them moved even an inch. They looked like statues. The rest of the crowd was astonished yet again. Who was Lin Feng really for so many people to be willing to wait months and possibly even years without complaining? In the middle of the forbidden area, Lin Feng didn't know what was happening outside. He was standing motionless while looking at the statue. Lin Feng obviously understood that statue, like the snake, was actually a body. That person was dead, he wasn't breathing and his body hadn't decomposed, therefore, he just looked like a statue. Duan Xinyi was standing behind Lin Feng and was looking at the man, which seemed to be reigning over the palace. At that moment, Duan Xinyi and Lin Feng's minds were moved into another world. High in the sky, there was a silhouette riding a ferocious beast, that beast was 100-meter-long purple dragon. It was breathing out purple qi and its breath caused the clouds to dissolve. It looked extremely powerful. In the sky, there was an endless storm of lightning. This lightning was purple and contained deadly qi. The purple light was revolving around the body of the person and the dragon. That person looked like a celestial being and was extremely majestic. He was traveling through the clouds, he was an extremely strong cultivator. He looked like he was dominating the entire world beneath his feet. He didn't say any superfluous words. He was just bathing in the clouds. When Lin Feng became aware of what was going on in his mind, his heart started pounding extremely violently. It seemed like the statue-like man, a moment ago, opened its eyes and invaded their minds to show them these images. He was a really strong cultivator. At that moment, Lin Feng didn't count as a strong cultivator. On the path of cultivation, he still had a lot of work to do. At that moment, the strong cultivator in the sky turned around. Lin Feng's body started shaking. He only had the impression that two eyes were staring through his soul. Finally, "I've always been waiting for someone to come into my world," said a majestic voice. Lin Feng's heart was violently pounding. Finally, there was someone. He was still conscious, he wasn't dead. No need to act so strange. The soul is one of the most mysterious things in our world. Even if the flesh and muscles die, the soul can remain. Even though my body died a long time ago, my soul remained because I was extremely strong. My consciousness has been alive all this time but only until today. After that, I will disappear. Flesh and bones died but the soul hadn't. Lin Feng was surprised and was wondering what cultivation level this person had. Besides, when listening to the man's voice, Lin Feng had the impression of a lonely hero who would no longer see his glorious days. He was doomed to eternally disappear. Since the first time when Ziqian came here, I established one rule for all his following generations. Only people who are in love can come to me and receive my blessings. Ziqian has always stuck to that rule and allowed married couples to come to me, but today, I don't know why, you are not descendants of the Z government. Maybe you meeting me was fate. You came at the moment when the strength of my spirit was about to disappear. Besides, you both have the power of a blood spirit. Young man, you are truly talented. These words resonated in Lin Feng and Duan Xianye's minds. Lin Feng's heart stopped for a second. They both had the strength of a blood spirit. Duan Xianye had the blood spirit, Lin Feng obviously knew that. But Lin Feng also had the strength of a blood spirit. My snake spirit, Lin Feng was shivering. Maybe the spirit, which caused everyone to call him a piece of trash, was actually a blood spirit. But Lin Feng's father didn't have a blood spirit. In the entire Lin clan, there wasn't a single person who had the snake spirit either. There was only one explanation: Lin Feng had never seen his mother, she was certainly the one who possessed the same spirit. Young girl, I don't have much time left, you are weaker than him, I can grant you some more power but you will have to understand it. If you accept, just nod, that'll be enough for me, said the voice to Duan Xianye. Lin Feng didn't know how Duan Xianye was going to react but immediately after he heard the voice say, very good, I will also grant you with some of my knowledge. Do your best to understand it. When he finished talking, Duan Xianye felt her body shake intensely. The images in her brain disappeared, an amazing strength penetrated into her brain which made her faint. The strong cultivator looked at Lin Feng and smiled warmly. The last time a descendant of the Z government came in here, I explained to him that I wanted him to send me as many people at once because this would be the last time for me. I was hoping to meet a real genius and grant him with everything that I possess. Even though there aren't many people, you are enough. Even though your cultivation level is low, your soul is extremely powerful. You are much stronger those who have the same cultivation level as you. You are the most appropriate person to choose. Lin Feng was only 17 and had already broken through to the 8th Ling Qi layer, but in the eyes of the man, Lin Feng's cultivation level was low. There were many cultivation geniuses in the vast and boundless continent. What drew his attention was Lin Feng's soul. The power of my soul, thought Lin Feng. For Lin Feng, the soul was an abstract concept, it was unfathomable. The power of my soul, thought Lin Feng. For Lin Feng, the soul was an abstract concept, it was unfathomable. Lin Feng wasn't able to understand such concepts, his cultivation level was too low. Maybe you still don't understand clearly what the soul is. I will explain to you using simple concepts. In fact, the spirit of a cultivator is a part of his soul. Those who have a powerful soul can make their spirit stronger and carry out much stronger attacks. When a cultivator practices cultivation and becomes stronger, his soul actually becomes stronger as well. The spirit thus becomes stronger too. For example, a cultivator who has a sword spirit, when he is still weak, his sword spirit is of little use. It only enables him to understand sword skills slightly better than other people, but because his cultivation level is low, his soul is also weak and doesn't give him any particular sword ability. In such circumstances, the cultivator cannot be called a sword master. A strong and authentic sword master doesn't need a sword, his spirit is his sword. Besides, they can use the sword within their spirit as they wish. The more they use it, the more they understand the mysteries of the sword, and it becomes faster and faster. The strong cultivator knew that he didn't have much time left, so he was explaining things clearly to Lin Feng to help him understand various aspects of cultivation. There are some people who have a dual spirit. Those people are considered as geniuses by many people, but in fact, if their two spirits are ordinary ones, it is not of much use. It's not really incredible. Such people are even weaker than someone who has only one extremely strong spirit. However, those who have a dual spirit are usually regarded as geniuses because they have been granted a powerful soul. Their soul must be very strong to host dual spirits, stronger than that of other people. The strength of their dual spirits also increases their power of understanding. It is also easier for them to solve unfathomable problems. There are also an endless amount of other advantages. In short, you have to understand that the soul is what shapes your future. Someone with a powerful soul can easily kill people at the same cultivation level as them. For instance, I gave a skill to the members of the Z government, Purple Annihilation. That skill uses the power of their soul to control the spirit, enabling them to control and shape the chi itself. Such an attack is very difficult to block. So that's how it is. The Purple Annihilation skill used the strength of their soul. Ziying was actually not very strong, but he had broken through to the 9th Ling Qi layer, which was only one layer higher than Lin Feng. If Ziying could do it, Lin Feng could use it too. After all, the strong cultivator said that he had seen Lin Feng's soul was extremely strong. He had also said that Lin Feng was much stronger than other people of the same cultivation level as him. At that moment, the image in Lin Feng's mind flickered. It seemed to weaken, but in a flash returned to normal. "It seems like I don't have much time left," said the strong cultivator, whose voice sounded disappointed. He immediately said to Lin Feng, "I don't have much more to say. You should remember that a strong and powerful soul is what increases your cultivation speed. It can allow you to perfectly control your abilities and spirit. Besides, it can help you control external forces during a battle. Besides, a powerful soul can help you gain control over powerful weapons and profound pills." The strong cultivator had told Lin Feng about the numerous benefits which made Lin Feng a bit nervous. These were all the great things extremely strong cultivators could do. "Please accept something from me. I would like to offer you some of my memories. I divided these memories into 3 parts, this makes them easier to understand. The first part is composed of the great things I achieved as well as the martial skills and agility techniques which I found to be useful. I don't want them to die out with me, so I give them to you. At least, nobody will be able to say that I led a greedy life. The second part of my memories is about energy, pills and weapons. They are all for you as well. The third part of my memories is the simplest one but also the most important. It is about art of soul cultivation. This is something I acquired intentionally, which made me who I am today. The art of soul cultivation is a celestial art. It enabled me to enhance my practice and obtain a powerful soul. It is the power of my soul which enabled me to stay conscious such a long time until now. Besides, I have never given my soul cultivation to anyone before. You must cherish it." The man's voice was lower and lower. When he said his last word, the world illusion broke apart. Immediately after, 3 lights appeared and carried the memories into Lin Feng's body, mind and soul. Boom! Lin Feng's heart was violently pounding. His body felt extremely painful as if his bones had been crushed. In a flash, he was sweating a cold sweat. All these memories penetrated into his body and soul. How could it not be painful? Lin Feng had the impression that everything was spinning. All the memories penetrating into his mind, he had the impression that his head was going to explode. Even though that strong cultivator had just transmitted 3 separate groups of memories into Lin Feng's mind, they were extremely powerful and contained a lot of information. Lin Feng had the impression his head was going to explode. Immediately after that, just like Duan Xin Yi, he fainted and collapsed. They were both lying down on the ground unaware of the time passing. Outside of the forbidden area, the crowd was patiently waiting. A day had already passed since Meng Qing had annihilated the Z government. Meng Qing was always standing in front of the door of the forbidden area. Her clothes were snowy white and fluttering in the wind, but her body remained motionless just like the goddess of ice. None of those who were wearing bronze masks had moved either. They were calmly sitting cross-legged at the front of the crowd. The crowd hadn't left. Some of them wanted to leave but they didn't dare. They had mixed feelings and didn't really know why they were staying, was it out of fear or out of curiosity? The entire crowd was calmly looking at the unmoving silhouette which looked like a beautiful statue. They had also become very curious and wanted to know more about Lin Feng. They wanted to know who he really was. They also wanted to know more about Meng Qing. A layer of ice was covering Meng Qing's body. It was extremely cold. It seemed like that ice wanted to expand and freeze everything, but that Meng Qing was controlling it, so it didn't. That ice had the form of a white fog. Only a little bit of that fog was enough to freeze an entire person. Nobody knew what it was and nobody knew either that Meng Qing's body, at that moment, was being damaged by that incredible coldness. She was unable to control the ice chi. When she had arrived at the Z government and that the old man said that he had killed Lin Feng, an incredible quantity of ice chi had condensed inside her body. That chi was the same as what was surrounding her body. When she heard the old man, Meng Qing had forgotten everything, including to control the ice chi condensed in her body. The only thing she had in her mind was to kill using the ice chi. There were consequences though, from all that cold chi which had burst out from her body. She had become unable to control it. She could only suffer in silence while nobody would ever know anything about it. Lin Feng, who was still in the forbidden area, awoke. Duan Xin awoke as well. At that moment, they both had many new memories in their minds. Duan Xin remembered a sword skill, a beautiful sword skill. That sword skill was meant for women. She also had an agility technique. Lin Feng had a massive amount of new memories. His brain was filled with the 3 categories of memories. These memories contained a massive amount of information. Lin Feng was still absorbing all of the knowledge. Fortunately, when the strong cultivator transmitted these memories to Lin Feng, he had already sorted them into 3 categories, that way, they weren't chaotic in Lin Feng's mind. He wouldn't have been able to endure that. Everything was clear and organized. After sitting there for a while, Lin Feng was finally able to absorb all these memories. He opened his eyes and felt calm. Cultivating the soul, said Lin Feng to himself. It was a way to practice and make one's soul stronger, and on top of that, it enabled one to develop a powerful soul. The cultivation technique was called surplus souls. A cultivator could make his entire soul break into small pieces called surplus souls, which made it very convenient to practice. A cultivator could develop one surplus soul which would make all his other souls become stronger as well. He could advance his training greatly this way. When the surplus souls condensed back into a whole, they provided the cultivator with terrifying power. Besides, even if the soul was divided into many surplus souls, a cultivator could still use as many of them as he wished. For example, if he had 1 million surplus souls, he could use all them at the same time. How terrifying would that be? Breaking one soul into a surplus soul was excruciatingly painful. The art of the surplus soul was extremely powerful but was also extremely brutal, which is why nobody would dare to think of it. The cultivation method for surplus souls wasn't the only thing that affected Lin Feng's heart. All the other memories caused Lin Feng's heart to race. The cultivation method for surplus souls wasn't the only thing that affected Lin Feng's heart. All the other memories caused Lin Feng's heart to race. He possessed all the memories of the strong cultivator and knew how strong this person was. Zun Qi layer. He was above the Tian Qi layer. With one fist, he could crush a mountain. One sword could carve out a river or a lake. Lin Feng could finally understand the possibilities granted by the different cultivation levels. The Xian Qi layer, like the Ling Qi layer, was divided into 9 layers. After the Xian Qi layer, there was the Tian Qi layer. After the Tian Qi layer, there was the Zun Qi layer. The cultivators of the Zun Qi layer were seniors within the cultivation world. Lin Feng could barely defeat a cultivator of the Xian Qi layer. It was already very difficult. Lin Feng couldn't imagine how far he was from the Zun Qi layer. Lin Feng turned around and looked at the breathless corpse. He sighed. A cultivator of the Zun Qi layer was in front of him, a little cultivator of the Ling Qi layer. Lin Feng was still a nobody. A cultivator of the Zun Qi layer could kill him by breathing on him. Cultivators of the Xian Qi layer, in Shuiyu and Mou, were already considered as very strong cultivators. Concerning the Tian Qi layer, Lin Feng had never heard anything about it. He didn't even know if there were cultivators of the Tian Qi layer within Shuiyu or Mou. As far as cultivators of the Zun Qi layer were concerned, Lin Feng was certain that such a cultivator could destroy an entire country with a wave of their hand. Shuiyu certainly didn't have such cultivators. Cultivators of the Zun Qi layer could extract the strength from their blood and transmit it to their offspring. They were able to create blood spirits and pass them on to their descendants. Everybody knew how incredibly strong blood spirits were. Besides, at that moment, Lin Feng had seen one of the legendary cultivators and had received an incredible amount of knowledge from him. He had received his legendary memories, the memories of a godlike cultivator. That huge snake was surprisingly a Zun-level dragon. Lin Feng was looking at the dragon. If it had been out in the world, it could have annihilated an entire country with one breath. Its blood had turned into a lake which never lost its strength over hundreds of years. Besides, the blood kept its vitality and could penetrate into bodies, granting people the strength of a blood spirit. Unfortunately, the purple lake had been completely absorbed by Lin Feng. Ancestor, I have received your legacy and inherited your memories. Ancestor, you are now my teacher. Lin Feng looked at the remains of the strong cultivator and suddenly knelt down in front. Lin Feng's heart was filled with respect and adoration. He performed the kowtow, which sealed teacher and student. He had separated his memories into 3 parts and transmitted them to Lin Feng. He deserved Lin Feng's obedience and respect. If the strong cultivator had still been alive, Lin Feng would have wanted him as his teacher. Lin Feng could have returned to Shuiyu as a hero with such a profound teacher. When Duan Xinyi saw Lin Feng, she came next to him and started to respectfully kowtow in front of the statue as well. The strong cultivator had also transmitted thoughts to her, extremely powerful sword skills and powerful agility techniques. He had also become her teacher. Ancestor, the first part of the memories you transmitted to me, I will always remember them. If, someday, I have the opportunity to meet some of your old friends, I will tell them about what happened to you, said Lin Feng. The first part of the memories from the strong cultivator contained his entire life, and Lin Feng could also remember the strong cultivator's friends. Even though these memories were a few hundred years old, cultivators of the Zun Qi layer could remain alive for a long time. Not dying for a few hundred years was a normal thing for them. Besides, the strong cultivator's old friend had entered a deep and mysterious dimension. Lin Feng didn't clearly understand what kind of dimension it was though. Lin Feng stood up and sighed. Even though the cultivator of the Zun Qi layer was extremely strong, he had, all these years, never forgotten about love. He only wanted to see couples in love with each other, because he was, himself, a very romantic person. Lin Feng, when are we leaving? Asked Duan Xinyi in a low voice. They couldn't stay indefinitely in the forbidden area, they would get bored to death. Lin Feng looked pensive. The people of the Z government were waiting for him outside. If he went out, they would immediately ambush him. He still was not confident in winning against a cultivator of the Xian Qi layer. Cultivators of the Xian Qi layer can use pure Qi, that would be too dangerous for me. My strength against his pure Qi it's too difficult to win, thought Lin Feng, but he still had faith in his ability. He had managed to make a cross-shaped wound on the old man's chest. He had almost killed him. At that moment, Lin Feng had absorbed the strength of the purple blood lake. It had penetrated into his flesh and bones. His snake spirit had completely absorbed the purple lake and had become much stronger. It had enabled him to obtain a new purple spirit. Lin Feng was also convinced that even though he couldn't kill the old man, who had broken through to the Xian Qi layer, he definitely had the strength to engage in a battle against him. He just didn't know whether he would be the victor. Xin, let's go and see if we can leave, said Lin Feng. She was, of course, not going to have any objections, so she just nodded. Let's go. Lin Feng said that and immediately headed back. It was getting darker and darker and the path was growing narrow. A short time after, they arrived in front of the entrance of the forbidden area. You stay behind me, I will check first, said Lin Feng as he moved forwards. He put his hand on the door of the forbidden area. Boom! The door of the forbidden area slowly opened itself. People who were inside the forbidden area just had to touch the door once to open it. Lin Feng was a bit nervous as he had unintentionally opened the door. He released some of his qi. He groaned and in his hand appeared an extremely sharp sword. The door of the forbidden area was slowly opening itself, the atmosphere was suddenly extremely cold, the coldness was piercing to the bones. How cold? Why is it so cold? The old man wouldn't have been able to release such an incredibly cold qi. But when Lin Feng realized what was happening outside, he was stupefied. The energy around his body also vanished without trace. The door of the forbidden area had finally entirely opened itself. A beautiful face was in front of him. Surprisingly, it was Meng Qing and she was patiently waiting for him. It wasn't the old man. Obviously, when Meng Qing saw Lin Feng, she was also astonished and surprised. Meng Qing, said Lin Feng while a huge smile appeared on his face. But Meng Qing looked as cold as before, her facial expression hadn't changed at all. She glanced at Lin Feng and then at Duan Xin, who was coming out at that moment too. When Meng Qing saw that Duan Xin was wearing Lin Feng's clothes, she looked a bit surprised, but immediately after she adopted her cold and indifferent facial expression once again. She was absolutely expressionless. When Duan Xin saw Meng Qing, she was astonished and sighed. How beautiful! Surprisingly, there were such beautiful women in the world. Not only was she very beautiful, but also very strong. Duan Xin was extremely self-confident when it came to her beauty. She had never seen anyone more beautiful than her before, but at that moment, she just saw a girl who was more beautiful than her and it seemed like she was close to Lin Feng. You're all right. That's the main thing. Let's go, said Meng Qing coldly. After that, she turned around and started walking away. Some ice qi rose into the air which made Lin Feng frown. That ice qi was a problem. Why was Meng Qing's body emitting such a cold qi? Lin Feng suddenly remembered that he had already seen such a qi around Meng Qing's body and was a bit surprised. He then immediately shouted, Meng Qing, wait. But it seemed like Meng Qing ignored Lin Feng. She continued walking as before. Her silhouette made her look very lonely from behind. Stop! Lin Feng walked out from the entrance of the forbidden area. The crowd was astonished. Lin Feng surprisingly dared talk to Meng Qing using such a tone. Not did Meng Qing look like a celestial being, but she was also extraordinarily cold. Come back to me, shouted Lin Feng angrily. A light flashed through Meng Qing's eyes, she didn't look at Lin Feng. Immediately after, surprising everybody, Meng Qing slowly started walking back towards Lin Feng. What was the nature of Lin Feng and Meng Qing's relationship? Why was such a strong female cultivator listening to Lin Feng? Xin, please leave for a moment, said Lin Feng while going back into the forbidden area. Duan Xin was stupefied. A touching expression appeared in her eyes, but she remained silent. She just nodded and walked out of the forbidden area and glanced at Meng Qing. At that moment, she felt an incredible coldness. She started shaking and her heart started pounding. How could it be that cold around the beautiful girl's body? She looked like she was going to freeze on the spot. "Come in," said Lin Feng to Meng Qing, who had arrived at the entrance door of the forbidden area. She remained silent and entered. The door of the forbidden area closed itself behind her. Lin Feng and Meng Qing's silhouettes disappeared. The crowd was just looking at that huge door. They were all extremely curious. What were they doing inside? In the forbidden area, Lin Feng grabbed Meng Qing's hand. Suddenly, a violently cold energy spread through his hand. Right after that, Lin Feng's forearm was covered by a layer of ice. It was spreading all over his body. In the forbidden area, Lin Feng grabbed Meng Qing's hand. Suddenly, a violently cold energy spread through his hand. Right after that, Lin Feng's forearm was covered by a layer of ice. It was spreading all over his body. How cold! Lin Feng was stupefied. At that moment, Meng Qing's body was extremely cold. Even with his cultivation level, Lin Feng had the impression that he was going to freeze on the spot. He turned around and looked at Meng Qing. He still sounded angry and said, "What's wrong with you?" "Nothing," said Meng Qing while slightly shaking her head. She was surprised. "I'm not only talking about the fact that you came to look for me with a layer of ice damaging your body, but also, when you just walked away." "Why did you walk away?" Lin Feng looked unhappy and he knew how powerful that ice was. Last time, he had already seen Meng Qing's pain. That time, the ice wasn't any weaker. Meng Qing perfectly knew that Lin Feng had a solution for the ice. Surprisingly, she turned around and walked away from him. How could Lin Feng not get angry? Meng Qing raised her head and looked at Lin Feng. She looked surprised. But immediately after, she lowered her head again like a little girl who was being scolded. She didn't dare look at Lin Feng. Lin Feng started shaking when he saw that Meng Qing remained uncommunicative. He felt like he had to say something. "I will help you take away that ice chi." While speaking, Lin Feng's body shook and a dragon chant spread through the atmosphere. It made the entire atmosphere vibrate. Lin Feng's snake spirit appeared. It had 6 heads and was huge and majestic. Its eyes were looking directly at Meng Qing. When Meng Qing saw the snake spirit, she was surprised. The last time she had seen it, it didn't have 6 heads and wasn't so gigantic. At that moment, it was huge and majestic. What had happened to Lin Feng's spirit was a miracle. "It seems like I was right," thought Meng Qing. She was even more certain that she had guessed right. Lin Feng's snake spirit was actually a dragon. The 6 heads of the snake were singing the chant of dragons. At that moment, the ice around Meng Qing's body turned into a white cloud and the snake started to swallow it. At that moment, Lin Feng's spirit, which was floating from his back, looked like 6 different snakes constantly moving. It looked extremely powerful. "In the future, do not ignore what I say," said Lin Feng. Meng Qing was, as before, silent. Meng Qing slightly nodded and lowered her head. The ice chi around her body was gradually getting very weak. When Lin Feng saw Meng Qing's facial expression, his heart felt a bit painful. He didn't know how to talk to this girl. Since they had left the Black Wind Mountain, Meng Qing had always been with him. He was the only person close to her. Since Lin Feng had left Meng Qing and traveled over a huge distance, a long time had already elapsed. It was very difficult for Meng Qing to be separated from him. Surprisingly, she had even chased him to the Mou country. Furiously, she had slaughtered the people of the Z government. In such a short time, she had gone through a lot of hardships. Besides, after such a difficult time, she had seen that Lin Feng and Duan Xinyi were together and Duan Xinyi was wearing Lin Feng's clothes. How could she be happy after seeing that? Even though she didn't show her emotions, Lin Feng, who had broken through to the Earth fusion dimension, could now sense the emotions which she was trying to hide. He had noticed because of her movements when she turned to leave. Her body was slightly shaking and she was continuously blinking as if she was close to tears. Silly girl, she actually cared but always remained cold. All of this caused compassion to fill Lin Feng's heart. Then, he approached Meng Qing, which made her start shaking. It wasn't because of the cold qi that she was shaking, but because Lin Feng was moving closer to her. She was shaking and she felt like waves were crashing in her heart. Suddenly, she started feeling nervous. Immediately after, she felt that her body was being pulled. She could feel two arms wrap around her body. It was a warm embrace which immediately removed the cold from her body. She suddenly felt warmth invade her heart. When she realized what was happening, her eyes, which normally never revealed emotions, moved. She looked surprised. "Silly girl, you should know that if you suffer, I will suffer too," said Lin Feng softly. His voice was warm and sincere. His words came from the bottom of his heart. When Lin Feng saw that Meng Qing's body was being damaged by the ice qi and she was silently suffering, his heart felt a tremendous pain. It was the first time, whether it was in his previous or current life, that Lin Feng showed his love for a woman. His feelings towards Meng Qing were pure and sincere. When Meng Qing heard these soft and warm words, she shivered. Immediately after, something that had never happened, she smiled. It was a charmingly soft and sweet smile. She moved a little and suddenly, she rested her head on Lin Feng's shoulder, which made her feel calm and relaxed. Meng Qing's hands were behind Lin Feng's back but was being held mid-air. It seemed like she didn't know what to do with her hands, but finally, her little hands slowly moved towards Lin Feng and she then delicately embraced him. When Lin Feng sensed her delicate hands on his back, he giggled foolishly. He also put some more pressure into his embrace and used one hand to stroke Meng Qing's hair from her face. So, that's how it felt to be in love. It was truly sweet. It was a very warm feeling from deep within the heart. Meng Qing's body calmly leaned against Lin Feng's body with her head on his shoulder. Lin Feng looked at Meng Qing. She was smiling, but in her beautiful eyes, surprisingly, there were tears which slowly flowed down her cheeks onto the ground. She was crying and emitting small sobs. Her eyes grew blurry. Meng Qing had been extremely worried about Lin Feng while they were apart. She had not stopped looking for him, for even a moment. Finally, she found him. She had been riding at full speed to the Golden Z Mountain without rest. Then, when she arrived, she was told that Lin Feng was dead. When she heard that Lin Feng was dead, she had felt hopelessness invade her heart. Her heart had felt so painful. She felt like a piece of her had died. She had just had one thought: kill. Kill the old man of the Z government and kill everyone who shared his bloodline. A man in love could accomplish great things and dye his sword red on the battlefield for a woman. A woman in love could also accomplish great things. She would freeze heaven and earth if it stood between her love. The most important thing was that Lin Feng was still alive, but then Meng Qing had seen that he was with another girl. She believed that he no longer had a place for her. She was desperate. She hadn't thought about anything else but running away. A horrible feeling invaded her heart. She had never experienced such a terrible feeling. Since Lin Feng and Meng Qing had left the Black Wind Mountain, only a short time had elapsed, less than a year, but during that short time, they had experienced a lot of things together. In Meng Qing's memories, there was a sinister forest filled with ferocious beasts, and from the outside world, all her memories included Lin Feng. Lin Feng was already an indispensable part of her life. The horrible feeling hadn't lasted for too long. Lin Feng had stopped her. He had made her come into the forbidden area, and now they were locked in an embrace. At that moment, Meng Qing understood how cold she was before that. It seemed like the coldness in her heart had transformed into warmth. It was a wonderful feeling. The two of them seemed to be locked in each other's embrace. They softly embraced for a long time. The ice chi had already dispersed and Lin Feng's spirit had vanished, but they were still standing there, embracing each other. After a long time, Meng Qing finally moved. Lin Feng let go of her and looked at her beautiful face while smiling. However, it seemed like Meng Qing didn't care about giving him face. She turned around and coldly walked towards the exit. Lin Feng was stupefied. He scratched his head, he was startled, and then he immediately chased her. The door of the forbidden area slowly opened itself. The crowd looked extremely curious as Lin Feng and Meng Qing came out. The door of the forbidden area slowly opened itself. The crowd looked extremely curious as Lin Feng and Meng Qing came out. Lin Feng and Meng Qing were actually holding hands. Meng Qing looked as cold and detached as before but was allowing Lin Feng to hold her hand and it looked very natural. They looked calm and serene. Besides, the ice around Meng Qing's body had completely disappeared. What a nice couple, thought the people in the crowd. At that moment, they all understood the nature of Lin Feng and Meng Qing's relationship. They understood why Meng Qing had gotten so furious when the old man said that he killed Lin Feng, which is why she killed the old man. Meng Qing and Duan Xinyi were the same, they both loved Lin Feng. He was frivolous, natural and unrestrained. Meng Qing and Lin Feng were a couple just like Lin Feng and Duan Xinyi. The crowd had the impression that they also looked like a perfect couple. They were all outstanding. The crowd was well aware of Lin Feng's natural talent. They understood even more clearly how strong Meng Qing was. Thus, they thought that Lin Feng and Meng Qing was an even better couple and it was more appropriate for them to be together. It seemed like they were soul mates. Only someone as gifted as Lin Feng could be with such an incredible girl. Ziyi and Ziling were blankly staring at Lin Feng. Ziyi lowered her head. She felt so inferior. She was a withered willow and Meng Qing was an incredibly beautiful woman who had even broken through to the Xian Qi layer, and that girl loved Lin Feng. Lin Feng only had to speak and she obeyed his every word. Ziyi used to think that Lin Feng would be interested in her, she felt ridiculous at that moment. She was nothing in comparison with Meng Qing and Duan Xinyi. She was much too ugly in comparison with these two girls. I would have never thought that Lin Feng was this powerful. Not only is he powerful with incredible natural talent but two beautiful girls like him, whispered Ziling. She envied these people. However, when Duan Xinyi saw them holding hands, bitter feelings invaded her heart. That was the first time that she was competing with another woman. She would have never thought that such a thing could even happen. Nonetheless, she had no choice but to face the facts. Meng Qing was a pure woman, besides, she was extremely beautiful. Such a girl was rare. Meng Qing also liked Lin Feng and on top of that, Lin Feng was also interested in her. When Lin Feng saw Duan Xinyi, he smiled wryly. He felt lost. In his previous life, Lin Feng was always single. In this world, there were so many outstanding girls who were interested in him. Prepare 2 horses for me, said Lin Feng, sounding cold and detached. Immediately, someone obeyed his order and prepared 2 Qixie horses. Get on a horse, we should go back, said Lin Feng to Duan Xinyi. She slightly nodded. She had been away for such a long time. The imperial family was probably worried about her. When Duan Xinyi arrived next to her horse, she immediately jumped onto its back. Even though she was a delicate woman, she was trained in riding. Meng Qing, let's get on a horse too, said Lin Feng to Meng Qing, who slightly nodded. She jumped up in the air and landed on the other horse. When she landed, Lin Feng jumped up as well and landed on Meng Qing's horse right behind her. He put his arms around her waist and grabbed the reins. Meng Qing shivered. This guy, let's go, said Lin Feng while urging the horse. The horses neighed and they left at full speed. Because the horse was galloping at full speed, Meng Qing's body was inclining backwards and leaning against Lin Feng's chest. Two people on one horse were galloping through the mountains. "Protect the princess," said Lin Feng to the celestial sword unit as an order. She was immediately surrounded by guards. "Princess," the crowd was looking at the people gradually leaving. They felt like they were suffocating. That Duan Xinyi was surprisingly a real princess, the princess of Shuiyu. Who was Lin Feng? Surprisingly, the Qi Xie troops listened to him, and then the princess and Meng Qing liked him. On an ancient road, the Qi Xie horses were galloping at full speed and a cloud of dust was surrounding them. On a horse, there were two silhouettes pressed tightly together. There was a beautiful girl who looked like a celestial being, and the other was a handsome young man who looked frivolous. Their hair fluttered in the wind as they rode. Fine horses, beautiful people, a vast ancient road, a young man and woman, the scene looked picturesque just like a painting. Meng Qing was calmly leaning against Lin Feng's chest. They weren't speaking. They were just enjoying the tranquility and serenity of the moment. It truly felt like a dream. Even if the ancient had no end, it would be wonderful to stay like this. As Lin Feng approached the Duanren border, he was using his earth fusion and his senses were sharp and acute. He could feel that someone was hiding in the mountains and staring at him. He slowly stopped the horse, looked towards the Duanren border and shouted, "Lin Feng, under the celestial sword Qi Xie battalion." The Duanren border was completely silent. There no voice or sound. The entire mountain range was drowned in absolute silence, but Lin Feng knew that the situation was dangerous. "Qi Xie troops, move towards the Duanren border," shouted Lin Feng. Lin Feng didn't know who was in Duanren border. Immediately after, the Qi Xie troops galloped forwards. A short moment after, Lin Feng frowned. He heard some whistling sounds in the air and then saw many arrows flying through the air, moving straight towards him. He raised his hand, sword light spread in the air, and the arrows which were moving towards him all broke. The Qi Xie horse was moving forwards again. However, the sound of the arrows didn't stop. It turned into a rain of arrows which landed in front of him as if they were trying to prevent him from moving further. "Meng Qing, kill them," said Lin Feng, sounding cold and expressionless. He had only just arrived and some people were already unscrupulously attacking him. They wanted to kill him, that wasn't an illusion. When Lin Feng finished talking, he jumped into the air. His body was floating in the sky above the valley as he rushed towards the cliffs. Meng Qing also jumped up in the air, and like a celestial being, she moved towards the Duanren border as well. In a flash, Lin Feng arrived on a gigantic stone. There were some troops continuing to shoot arrows, but the moment when they saw Lin Feng, their hands paused for a second and they stopped firing arrows. As expected, these are Shuiyu soldiers. When Lin Feng saw the armor the enemies were wearing, a cold and indifferent expression appeared on his face. Meng Qing had already told Lin Feng about the battle. Many people had been injured and had died, but finally, because they were in Shuiyu and cut off from reinforcements, the Mou troops retreated. The Duanren border had remained under the control of Shuiyu. At that moment, these soldiers were shooting at Lin Feng since he had arrived in the Duanren border. They wanted to kill him. "Who are you? Whose orders do you obey?" asked Lin Feng coldly and detached. Cold chi was surrounding his body. The soldier remained silent and released an arrow straight towards Lin Feng. "Die," said Lin Feng coldly. He raised his hand and a cold brilliance illuminated the atmosphere and pierced the soldier. The soldier was astonished and slowly fell dead onto the ground. After killing that soldier, Lin Feng continued. He used the earth fusion and could see every single person who was hiding in the mountains. None of them could escape from his senses. At that moment, Lin Feng had appeared in front of another soldier of Shuiyu and asked, "Whose orders are you obeying?" The soldier remained silent. "Die," said Lin Feng heartlessly. He raised his hand again, in a flash, another one had been killed by Lin Feng. Lin Feng didn't care for their silence. The Duanren border was huge, there would probably be one person who would speak. Lin Feng didn't stop moving. The Duanren border was turning into a river of blood. Lin Feng wasn't the only one massacring people at that moment, Meng Qing was doing the same. If Lin Feng told her to kill, she killed. Lin Feng forgot that he was in a territory of the Xueyu country. Even though this was the border defense against Imo Shui. He didn't stop killing. After having gone through war, he had become much stronger and his heart was now forged in battle. If anyone wanted to kill him, Lin Feng would not show mercy. He had fought for Xueyu, but what had Xueyu ever done for him? What had they done for Lu Zonglan? The princess had been kidnapped, the troops had fought each other, the MOU troops had come in to massacre them, and hundreds of thousands of troops had been massacred. There was a conspiracy to kill him. If Xueyu didn't care about him, did Lin Feng need to care about Xueyu? Lin Feng was an extraordinary person and he felt no sense of belonging towards the Xueyu country. If Xueyu wanted to kill him, he would raise his sword against Xueyu. During an undetermined period of time, blood kept flowing from the mountains of the Duanren border. It looked like there were blood lakes running through the mountains. During an undetermined period of time, blood kept flowing from the mountains of the Duanren border. It looked like there were blood lakes running through the mountains. Lin Feng and Meng Qing returned onto the main road. Cold qi surrounded their bodies. They had killed all the soldiers who were hiding in the mountain. Back then, Lu Zonglan had been in Duanren city protecting the valley. Lin Feng would have never thought that one day, he would personally use his sword in the Duanren border to kill Xueyu soldiers. The Celestial Sword Battalion had arrived in the valley of the Duanren border. There were many corpses in front of them. They were all wearing the armor of Xueyu. The road was being blocked. We killed them all, said Lin Feng to the Qi Xia unit, sounding cold and detached. He had noticed that they were surprised by the scene. Now, come with me, let's head out at our maximum speed. Then Lin Feng and Meng Qing rushed through the air as their horse moved at an incredible speed. The people behind them remained silent and started galloping, closely following Lin Feng. After the Duanren border, there was Duanren city. At that moment, Duanren city looked apocalyptic. There was only ash filling the air. The entire city was destroyed by the fire. Above the gigantic city gate, there were some Xueyu soldiers and they opened the gate. Lin Feng hadn't said anything. He had immediately moved towards the city gate and entered the city. Nobody tried to stop him either. The Qi Xia unit galloped towards the city, but after they entered the city, the gate started closing itself. In front of Lin Feng, there were some soldiers who were slowly moving towards him. A sharp and majestic qi was being released from their bodies. They were all on horses while staring at Lin Feng. It seemed like they had been waiting for Lin Feng to come back. From their horsebacks, they grabbed their bows and raised them into the air. Lin Feng and Meng Qing could feel a deadly qi invading the atmosphere and oppressing them. "Stop, or we will shoot," shouted an ice-cold voice. But Lin Feng completely ignored them and continued to move forward on his horse. The one who had just shouted was surprised. He raised his hand with his bow, narrowed his eyes, and a devilish ice-cold expression appeared on his face. "Die!" He lowered his hand, and pulled the bowstring. At that moment, an arrow whistled through the air, moving straight towards Lin Feng and Meng Qing. Boom! The arrow hit the horse with a piercing blow. That arrow surprisingly had such brutal strength. Amongst these people, none of them were weak, they had all broken through to a high Ling Qi layer. They were all elite soldiers. The Qi Xia horse collapsed, dead from the first arrow. The first arrow wasn't intended for Lin Feng but for the horse. After that first arrow, he put another one in his bow, but this one was for Lin Feng. This one was supposed to kill Lin Feng. Lin Feng and Meng Qing jumped into the air together and floated above the ground. They then immediately threw themselves at the crowd, ignoring the arrows. "Freeze," whispered Meng Qing in her snow-white clothes. Ice spread through the atmosphere. At that moment, all the arrows that were moving towards her immediately froze and emitted small cracking sounds. They were frozen in place. Besides, Lin Feng was at Meng Qing's side and a resplendent purple cloud emerged from his back. That purple cloud transformed into a silhouette. It was an insane 100-meter-high silhouette. It was in the shape of the purple dragon. That illusion surprisingly was the gigantic purple dragon. It was unceasingly flying higher and higher. It then looked at the crowd from above. That terrifying dragon made the facial expressions of the Shuayu soldiers change drastically. They were all looking at the purple dragon in the air. They started shaking and their hearts started pounding. Their hearts were being overcome with extreme fear. That illusion was Lin Feng's spirit after it had swallowed the entire purple lake filled with dragon blood. Even though Lin Feng's spirit had, after that, swallowed Meng Qing's ice chi, his spirit still hadn't changed. It was still, the extremely powerful purple spirit. Concerning the monstrous dragon illusion, amusingly, it was extremely similar to the purple dragon image which the cultivator was riding. The purple liquid of the lake was the blood of the purple dragon. Lin Feng's snake and the dragon from the forbidden area were in perfect harmony, roar. The gigantic dragon illusion roared and started to attack. An endless purple lake of blood gushed from the dragon's mouth. Immediately after, the lake melted everything in its path like acid, including the arrows. Blotting out the sky, the purple lake immediately moved to block the path of the retreating Shuayu soldiers. Immediately after, endless fear invaded their hearts and faces. Their cold killing intent had already disappeared. How could that be possible? How could Lin Feng have become so strong? They received the information that Lin Feng had broken through to the 6th Ling Qi layer. All of these cultivators had broken through to the 7th Ling Qi layer and were supposed to be able to kill Lin Feng. If Lin Feng came back alive, Duanren City was supposed to be the place where he would be buried, but Lin Feng had become so strong, everybody was dumbstruck. Their facial expressions indicated that they regretted everything. Killing Lin Feng wasn't a duty that they could fulfill. The purple lake was rushing through the sky and blotted out the sun. It then immediately crashed down onto the Shuayu soldiers. Immediately after, their bodies started to slowly melt as if they had come into contact with acid. In a flash, 100 cultivators had all been melted into a puddle. Melt. Being able to make things melt was definitely a monstrous ability. Originally, the blood and saliva of the dragon could melt even a powerful cultivator to nothing but bones, because Lin Feng and Duan Xinyi had inherited a blood spirit. Only their clothes melted when coming into contact with the dragon blood. After that, the purple liquid penetrated into their bodies, altering their original spirits. It had given them additional strength. Besides, when Lin Feng's snake spirit drank all the liquid of the purple lake, it had given Lin Feng's spirit the same powers as the purple dragon. When the Celestial Sword Battalion saw Lin Feng, who looked like a god, they were absolutely dumbstruck. Their heartbeats accelerated. Strong, Lin Feng had become much stronger. All of them had survived the war, they had gained lots of experience on the battlefield and had all become much stronger, but Lin Feng had become terrifying. There were larger groups of soldiers riding their horses in their direction, coming to kill Lin Feng, but, when they saw that sight, they had all stopped. They were looking at the dragon in the air, and under Lin Feng's feet was a gigantic purple lake which seemed to be under his control, and it was moving straight towards them. While the lake moved towards these soldiers, Lin Feng slowly turned around and looked at another large group rushing towards him. They were obviously Shuayu soldiers, and Lin Feng knew that they were all here to kill him. When they saw Lin Feng's expression, their hearts started to race. Coldness invaded their hearts which sent a shiver down their spines. "We have received a mission to kill you, but you can leave," said one soldier to Lin Feng. Immediately after, they turned around to leave. If they want to kill, they kill, if they are too weak, they leave. How ridiculous, said Lin Feng coldly. They had all received orders, but since their lives were in danger, they disobeyed the orders and left. What kind of discipline was that? Meng Qing, sorry to bother you, please confiscate all these horses for us, said Lin Feng while turning to look at Meng Qing. Their horse was killed by an arrow. It was a bit inconvenient for him to attack because he always melted the people and their horses at the same time. All right, said Meng Qing while nodding. She moved in the air and released some ice chi, making the hearts of these Shui soldiers pound. How cold! Apart from Lin Feng, there was another strong cultivator, a cultivator of the Xian Qi layer. In other words, even if Lin Feng wasn't this strong, they would all still die. Wanting to kill Lin Feng under such circumstances sounded like a joke. They were all terrified. They had received orders and had to bear the consequences of their actions. Ice. Meng Qing raised her hand. Ice emerged. The crowd was shaking. Immediately after, the ice spread, it moved forward and spread through the atmosphere. Everybody was frozen like a statue. Immediately after, they collapsed from their horsebacks and died. Get on the horses, hurry, said Lin Feng calmly. He recalled his spirit back into his body and ran, immediately after jumping on a horse. Meng Qing also jumped on the horse. Lin Feng, what's going on? Asked Duan Xinyi when she saw Lin Feng's actions. Some people want us dead, they don't want us going back to the imperial city, said Lin Feng while looking at Duan Xinyi. What about me? Do they want to kill me too? Yes, said Lin Feng while nodding. Duan Xinyi's heart was pounding. They even wanted to kill the princess. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers have died, the princess disappeared, even though we won the war. In the end, they want to sentence Lu Zhonglan to death, because even though we won the war, it was still a tragic victory. Besides, we haven't managed to protect the princess who was kidnapped by Mou. Therefore, they will be able to sentence him to death. They also want to kill me. I cannot go back to the imperial city. But if you appear in the imperial city, they will be unable to sentence me to death. When Duan Xinyi heard Lin Feng's words, her heart started pounding and she felt very cold. Because they wanted to sentence Lu Zhonglan to death, they also wanted to kill the princess. Could it be as easy as that? Or maybe that they just didn't only want to kill Lu Zhonglan, they had also sacrificed her. The princess perfectly understood who was at the origin of all of this. What Duan Xinyi didn't understand was why she was kidnapped. Besides, why did Shuiyu and Mou seem to be working together? If it had really originated from the person she thought, why did they have to kidnap her? Why didn't they just kill her on the spot? The person she was thinking about was her brother, the crown prince, Duan Wu Dao. He was extremely aggressive, brutal and obeyed no principles and lived with no morals. Duan Wuya, the second prince, and her were very close, but she wasn't close to the crown prince at all. Therefore, because she had disobeyed Duan Wu Dao, she had to die. Outside of the imperial city, the scene looked like a seething cauldron of hatred. It was just as lively and crowded inside as before. At that moment, many people were moving towards the gate which separated the exterior and the interior of the imperial city. Outside of the imperial city, the scene looked like a seething cauldron of hatred. It was just as lively and crowded inside as before. At that moment, many people were moving towards the gate which separated the exterior and the interior of the imperial city. At that moment outside of the imperial city, behind the moat surrounding the city, a thick and dense deadly qi filled the atmosphere and enveloped the entire area. The people and horses behind the river were all wearing the same armor. All the horses were qi xie horses. They were surrounding the imperial city. At that moment, the troops had surprisingly encircled the imperial city. There were several tens of thousands of soldiers. As far as the eyes could see, there were soldiers. It was a vast and boundless sea of soldiers who were all releasing an extremely strong chi. A group of people was approaching the imperial city and saw this army of soldiers. All sorts of comments were spreading through the crowd. They are Wuxia troops. I wouldn't have thought that the strong armored cavalry would encircle the city, but when facing the imperial city of billions, a few tens of thousands is nothing, it's a mere joke. They will not be able to do anything. Some people noticed that the troops, who were surrounding the imperial city, were all wearing red armor. This armor was the symbol of the border troops, the Wuxia troops, Lu Zhonglan's troops. That is the impermanence of life. Could it be that Lu Zhonglan, the divine arrow, will be executed in front of everybody, said someone while sighing. The fact that the Shuayu country wanted to kill Lu Zhong wasn't a secret anymore. It was said that Lu Zhonglan hadn't been able to protect the country against the army of Mou, and that he also had a bad influence, creating chaos amongst the troops. It was also said that he had wanted to prevent Duan Tianlang's troops from engaging the enemy and thus gave an opportunity for Mou to strike and kill hundreds of thousands of troops. Besides, the princess had been kidnapped by Mou and nobody knew if she was dead or alive, only Lin Feng rushed to save her. However, the truth was that Lu Zhonglan went with Lin Feng's plan. They massacred hundreds of thousands from the Mou army by making them enter Duanren city and burning them. That was an excellent plan. Lin Feng was considered to be dead. He traveled over a huge distance within the Mou country, and had relied on his own strength to kill the people who had kidnapped the princess. At that moment, he and the princess were missing. They were probably dead, or possibly in a critical situation. During that war, the nickname, the Divine Arrow, had lost its significance while Lin Feng had probably met his death. What a pity, he was a strong and powerful young man, he was probably already dead at that moment. The crowd looked at the sky, the sunlight was dazzling to the eyes. There were a few more hours to wait before Lu Zhonglan's execution. At that moment, the imperial city gate was firmly closed, nobody could enter the city, and they were all there because they wanted to witness Lu Zhonglan's execution. At that moment, the troops got agitated. Immediately after, the crowd saw them jump onto their horsebacks and grab the bows from their backs. It's an armed rebellion. For Lu Zhonglan's sake, the Wuxia troops surprisingly want to attack the imperial city. The crowd was astonished. Such a small number of troops wanted to attack the imperial city. They would certainly die if those troops attacked. The guards of the imperial city wouldn't just watch without reacting. A few tens of thousands of soldiers attacking, that was just suicide, nothing more. It would lead to nothing good. As expected, a high-ranking soldier saw these troops move and laughed coldly. That high-ranking soldier was called Meng Gufeng. He was an officer and had an illustrious reputation. He perfectly understood what he had to do when facing a rebellion. He could easily dispose of them. Besides, he would be able to let his son distinguish himself in action and settle this problem himself. On Meng Gufeng's side, there was a young man. That young man was wearing armor. He looked majestic and domineering. He was extraordinarily handsome. If Lin Feng had been there, he would certainly have recognized him, Meng Chong. The one whose cultivation had been crippled by Lin Feng in the past, he was Meng Gufeng's son. Meng Chong, I will let you give the order, what do you think? Meng Gufeng was smiling, which made Meng Chong happy. Meng Gufeng was enabling his son to distinguish himself in action, which would allow him to move up in rank much quicker. He could only be happy about this. All right, said Meng Chong while smiling. He then moved to the edge, still standing above the imperial city gate, and raised his hand. An incredible number of Shuayu guards raised their bows ready to shoot at the army outside. While standing there, Meng Chong felt powerful. He could decide everything, could even wipe out a small army with a single command. Lin Feng, what a pity that you are already dead, otherwise I would order you to be killed. Meng Chong felt pride once again invade his heart. He felt truly powerful. Lin Feng had crippled his cultivation and humiliated him, but at that moment, he had all the power. Meng Chong could order him to be killed. He couldn't practice cultivation anymore, but it didn't matter, he just had to raise his hand and let the army fight for him. Deadly qi spread above the gate of the imperial city. The soldiers outside the city gate felt resigned to meet their end here. They clearly understood that, if they fought, they would die here. "This battle is for nothing else but justice," shouted Ren Qingquang, standing at the front of the troops while looking up at the people above the city gate. They had fought and lost troops for their country, Xueyu, but how was Xueyu treating them? How was that fair? "Justice, does it even exist?" shouted the troops furiously. The ground was shaking and their hearts were shaking along with it. These people were going to sacrifice themselves for the sake of justice. Meng Chong and his father, above the city gate, were smiling coldly. "Justice is strength and influence is our justice. How could real justice exist in this world?" said Meng Chong while smiling evilly. After Lin Feng crippled Meng Chong's cultivation, Meng Chong's heart had grown even more evil. "Brothers, this is our last battle, we are all here to fight together, officers and soldiers. We shall have no regrets." Ren Qingquang, on his horse, looked frivolous. At that moment, even though he was going to die, he stuck to his principles. The sound of arrows entering bows filled the air and deadly energy spread through the atmosphere. "Ready." Meng Chong, from the top of the city wall, raised his hand to inform the troops to aim. The evil smile on his face was getting even more exaggerated. Right after that, he slowly moved to hide himself from any of the fighting. Ren Qingquang had also raised his hand outside the walls, a gentle breeze floated in the air making his hair flutter in the wind. At that moment, that frivolous man wasn't wearing his helmet. His lips were firm, his muscles were tense. Slowly, he just had to move his hand and the death bell would sound. The sound of horses spread across the horizon, but nobody paid attention to the sound. The whole crowd was only looking at the armies inside and outside of the imperial city. "Stop!" Ren Qingquang lowered his hand, the troops were ready to fire their bows at any time. The sound of galloping horses filled the air and the ground started to shake. The sound spread like waves across the armies. They were galloping at full speed towards the city. The sound led to everybody stopping what they were doing. "Stop, officer, it's me," shouted Lin Feng. It looked like his horse was flying through the air. The entire army divided into two and cleared a path while looking at the silhouettes that had just arrived. When Ren Qingquang heard this voice, he was stupefied. He narrowed his eyes, it was Lin Feng's voice. "Everybody, stop," said Ren Qingquang. All the troops were stupefied. Why were they stopping their attack? Who was that? Of course that Ren Qingquang wanted them to stop. If they attacked, they would be considered as armed rebels, and the guards on the city wall would have a reason to kill them. But if they didn't attack at all and that the Xueyu troops attacked them first, they would have a reason to strike back. Initially, he was resigned to die, but Lin Feng had arrived before he attacked the city. Lin Feng was thought to be dead and Lu Tsanglan was a criminal. Only Lin Feng could make the situation change at that moment. Ren Qingquang turned around, looked at Lin Feng and the others in the distance, and smiled. His heart was beating very fast. Lin Feng. When the troops heard Ren Qingquang's words, they were all stupefied. The Xueyu country had played a decisive role in making Lin Feng into a hero. Lin Feng was a true hero in their hearts. Lin Feng had obtained a lieutenant status with the Celestial Sword Battalion for killing the Black Guards of Mou. With his strength, he had managed to change the tide of the war. At that moment, Lin Feng was appearing again. Lin Feng. On the city wall, Meng Chong also saw that silhouette. He suddenly looked hideous and evil. The sound of the galloping horses was approaching. On the top of the city gate, the troops didn't shoot their arrows and slowly put their bows down while looking at the silhouettes who were arriving. The sound of the galloping horses was approaching. On the top of the city gate, the troops didn't shoot their arrows and slowly put their bows down while looking at the silhouettes who were arriving. "Ren Qing Kuang," shouted Lin Feng. He then jumped off the horse and glanced at the troops. "Everybody, don't attack," said Lin Feng. He obviously understood that if they attacked, there would be no way back. If they attacked the imperial city, they would be considered as rebels and would inevitably be executed. Those who worked behind the curtains didn't care about the lives of all these soldiers, all they cared about were their own personal interests. "Lin Feng, quickly. Lu Tsonglan doesn't have much time left," said Ren Qing Quan looking anxious. Lin Feng slightly nodded. He had precisely hurried because of that reason. He had been galloping all night rushing over to the imperial city. He knew that he couldn't afford to be slow. Lin Feng looked at the people on the top of the city wall and shouted, "Lin Feng is returning to the imperial city, open the gate." Lin Feng knew how Shuiyu wanted to dispose of him. On the one hand, they wanted to kill him, but on the other hand, they needed him to die at the border without witnesses. At that moment, at the very periphery of the imperial city, the whole crowd was watching the scene unfold. If they killed him, they would be forced to show their real intentions. As expected, when the troops heard Lin Feng's name, they were all startled. They slowly lowered their bows, which made Meng Chong furious. An ice-cold expression appeared on his face. He was fixedly staring at Lin Feng. "Lin Feng," whispered Meng Chong. He then said with a cold tone, "Lin Feng was kidnapped by Mo Yu. If he was here today, it is probably because he has become a rebel and is now working with them. He cannot enter the imperial city. Besides, there are these rebels as well. Surprisingly, they dare to surround the imperial city, getting ready to attack us with their arrows. We must kill them, get ready to attack." "Huh?" Lin Feng frowned. "Attack? Rebels? How shameless." Lin Feng wasn't the only one who was surprised. The troops on the top of the city gate were also surprised, including Meng Feng, but orders had to be obeyed, thus the troops raised their bows again, getting ready to fire. "Would you dare?" At that moment, Duan Xinyi was also beside Lin Feng on a horse. The crowd was astonished. It was the princess, Her Highness. Meng Chong was also astonished, his lips were shaking. Meng Chong used to hope he could marry the princess someday, but then Lin Feng crippled his cultivation. He had become a piece of trash and would never be able to marry Duan Xinyi. Besides, he understood why the troops outside the city gate wanted to fight. When he thought about that, a hideous expression appeared on his face. "Fire!" shouted Meng Chong while waving his hand. He looked extremely cruel. When Meng Chong finished talking, Meng Feng, who was behind Meng Chong, went pale. "Don't shoot!" shouted Meng Feng furiously. Even though he wanted to kill Princess Duan Xinyi and Lin Feng, at that moment, they had already returned safely to the imperial city. They couldn't brazenly kill them anymore. That would cause a great deal of trouble. If Meng Chong killed Lin Feng and Duan Xinyi, that would have made some people of the imperial family happy and some others unhappy. Lin Feng wouldn't be too much of an issue, but the emperor's daughter? Who would bear the responsibility for killing her? These thoughts were logical and were common sense, but Meng Chong's heart was filled with hatred and jealousy, which is why he wanted to attack. Psh! Psh! A few arrows whistled through the air. Lin Feng's facial expression was ice-cold. He jumped up in the air, his hand transformed into a sword, and he immediately cut the arrows down. "You want to kill the princess? How audacious! These rebels must die," said Lin Feng while smiling coldly. He immediately rushed towards the city gate at incredible speed. At the same time, Ren Qing Kuang and Meng Qing were also rushing towards the city gate. Psh! Lin Feng's hand pierced through the atmosphere. Immediately those who had shot their arrows were killed. They hadn't even had time to react. The soldiers who hadn't shot when they had heard Meng Feng were shocked. Lin Feng and the others had easily landed on the gate tower. "A moment ago, you're the one who gave the order to shoot, you wanted to kill the princess," said Lin Feng in an ice-cold tone to Meng Chong. "This guy again." When Meng Chong saw Lin Feng's facial expression, he started shaking. He had thought that if he saw Lin Feng again, he would prestigiously be able to order the troops to kill him, but at that moment, Lin Feng had easily appeared before him. One glance had been enough to destroy his enthusiasm. The only feeling left in his heart was dread. He was really scared of Lin Feng. The last time in the lovesick forest, Lin Feng had been merciless and crippled his cultivation, not letting him escape. He was slowly moving back. Lin Feng's eyes surprisingly sufficed to scare him into a retreat. Meng Gufeng took a step forwards and looked at the young man in front of him. It was the first time that he met Lin Feng, but many people knew about Lin Feng. Meng Gufeng obviously knew that Lin Feng had crippled his son's cultivation, making him a piece of trash. Meng Chong didn't do it on purpose, he didn't know that the princess was there. "I will personally make him apologize to the princess." Meng Gufeng was protecting his son. He hated Lin Feng. He needed to restore peace and remove himself from this event. Unintentionally. He didn't know. Lin Feng was smiling coldly. A moment ago, the princess was still shouting from her horseback. Everybody saw that with their own eyes, but Meng Chong still gave the order to shoot, attempting to murder the princess. Meng Chong must die. Meng Chong didn't see the princess. Meng Gufeng's cheeks were burning. Lin Feng didn't have time to talk nonsense. He moved forwards while releasing his killing intent. How could he not kill Meng Chong? On the top of the gate, some silhouettes flickered, they all moved in front of Meng Chong. They only saw Lin Feng smile coldly, who then said, "Meng Chong wants to kill the princess, he has been sentenced to death. Those who want to protect him are his accomplices and must die. I, Lin Feng, am the princess' personal guard, my job is to protect her. I will kill anyone who threatens her life, no matter who it is," said Lin Feng aggressively. He would kill anyone who attacked the princess, no matter what their status. The crowd clearly heard what Lin Feng had said. What a frivolous young man. Anyone who would threaten the princess would be killed. "Try if you dare," said Meng Gufeng, whose face turned pale. No matter what Meng Chong did, he was his son, was within his territory and his control. Lin Feng was only the princess' personal guard, how could he not get furious after being ignored? "When I say that I will kill, I kill. No matter who is in my way," said Lin Feng, sounding extremely domineering. He then took a step and an insane purple hurricane emerged in the atmosphere. A silhouette flickered and moved straight towards Lin Feng to attack him. Lin Feng just raised his hand at an incredible speed and his hat had already pierced through that person's heart. The soldiers, when they saw that, started shaking in fear. Nobody dared to risk their lives in front of that purple hurricane. In a flash, purple tentacles appeared from the silhouette, its deadly strength started to move forward. Everybody was pushed back, including Meng Gufeng. The purple cloud contained a corrosive power too. When people touched it, they felt like if they stayed in contact with it, they would melt. Lin Feng's silhouette flickered and rushed towards Meng Chong. Lin Feng was as fast as lightning, therefore, nobody had time to react. Lin Feng grabbed Meng Chong by the neck using only one hand and then directly moved to the edge of the city gate. Meng Chong's body was hanging over the edge, Lin Feng just had to let go and Meng Chong would fall to his death. At that moment, Meng Chong's face looked deathly pale, there wasn't the slightest degree of color in his face, only fear. "Lin Feng, don't you dare." Meng Gufeng had also turned deathly pale and furiously shouted these words, but he only saw that a smile had appeared on Lin Feng's face. "Qi Xie troops, hear me," shouted Lin Feng. At that moment, the army outside in front of the gate of the imperial city all said in unison, "Roger." Their voices spread through the atmosphere. At that moment, Lin Feng looked like a great commander, majestic and imposing, everybody obeyed him. He could light the fire within the hearts of his soldiers. These soldiers were, once again, feeling full of vitality. "Prepare your arrows," shouted Lin Feng. At that moment, all the troops out of the imperial city raised their bows. Both sides had their bows raised. Meng Chong gave the order to kill the princess. "This is a capital offense, he must be killed," shouted Lin Feng furiously. At that moment, he let go of Meng Chong, whose body slowly fell from the top of the gate. PSSH. Thousands of arrows pierced through the air. Meng Chong gave a horrible shriek and his life was put to an end. Suddenly, a red liquid started flowing down the city walls. All these arrows had pierced through his body, which pinned against the city wall. His corpse was hanging from the city walls by thousands of arrows. At that moment, everybody was speechless. How ruthless and powerful. That is how Lin Feng had gained such an illustrious reputation. It seemed like he was at the apex of his power. Meng Chong's body had been pinned onto the city wall by thousands of arrows. The crowd was dumbstruck. Meng Chong's body had been pinned onto the city wall by thousands of arrows. The crowd was dumbstruck. The ones above the city wall, even though they couldn't see it, could imagine what happened. They had all seen the cloud of arrows a moment before. Besides, the soldiers outside of the imperial city were punishing him because he had tried to kill the princess. The reason was absolutely valid, so nobody said anything. After all, Meng Chong had given the order to kill the princess. Everyone witnessed that. Meng Gufeng was shaking, his eyes were wide open, he was dumbstruck. "Meng Chong," shouted Meng Gufeng extremely loudly. He then moved towards the edge of the gate and looked down. In a flash, his face turned red. That was his son, pinned onto the city wall with so many arrows, his little boy. "Arg, Lin Feng," shouted Meng Gufeng furiously. He turned around and looked at Lin Feng with killing intent. "You killed my son." Meng Gufeng sounded like he couldn't believe it and was fixedly staring at Lin Feng. "Please open the gate, the princess and I are in a hurry," said Lin Feng, sounding indifferent. He looked particularly calm. "Open the gate," said Meng Gufeng with a hideous grin on his face. He then said evilly, "Lin Feng, you broke into the imperial city, killed my son in spite of my higher military rank, and have no respect for the hierarchy of Shuiyu." "Huh?" Lin Feng was surprised, but smiled coldly immediately after. Meng Gufeng was trying to accuse Lin Feng. What an old fox! Even though he was furious and enraged, he still remained sober-headed and declared Lin Feng's faults, which would make it much easier to attack Lin Feng after. "Officer Meng Chong tried to kill the princess, everybody saw it. He had to be killed for his own actions. Everybody thinks that what I did was the right thing to do. Besides, I will say it once more, officer, the princess and I have to handle important matters and are in a hurry, so open the gate and let us into the imperial city." Lin Feng's voice was filled with coldness, his words were sharp and poignant. "Handle important matters? You think that you can save Lu Zhonglan?" said Meng Gufeng while staring at Lin Feng and smiling evilly. He then added 3 words, "In your dreams." Boom! Meng Gufeng had just finished his sentence when an ice-cold deadly energy emerged from Lin Feng's body. Meng Gufeng was surprised and said, "What are you doing?" Lin Feng remained silent, his silhouette flickered and his hand turned into a sharp sword which pierced through the atmosphere. Meng Gufeng let out a horrible shriek. Meng Gufeng had tried to block Lin Feng's attack with his forearms, however Lin Feng proceeded to cut off his arms with his attack. That attack astonished the crowd once again. Meng Gufeng's troops, a moment before, had wanted to attack Lin Feng, but Ren Qingquang and Meng Qing were there, preventing them from moving forward. They could only calmly watch the scene. Meng Chong wanted to kill the princess. I had to protect the princess and kill Meng Chong, which is why Meng Gufeng has a personal grudge with me. Besides, he continues to refuse the princess entry into the imperial city and doesn't respect the hierarchy of the Shuayu country. I, Lin Feng, will kill anyone who represents a threat to the security of the princess. Lin Feng was standing there with his hair was fluttering in the wind, his voice was resonating across the horizon. People's hearts were pounding. Not only had Lin Feng killed Meng Chong, but he also wanted to kill Meng Gufeng. He would kill anyone in his way. When he finished talking, Lin Feng took a step and punched Meng Gufeng. Immediately after, Meng Gufeng's face turned deathly pale, blood started gushing from his mouth, but he was still evilly staring at Lin Feng. Meng Gufeng had also broken through to the 8th Ling Qi layer, just like Lin Feng, but Lin Feng knew about earth fusion, which made him much quicker. Meng Gufeng, a moment before, had been too negligent and his arms had been cut off. You are the only person responsible for the path you chose. There was an incredible sword energy which emerged from Lin Feng's hand and immediately penetrated into Meng Gufeng's body and then crushed his vital organs. With a flip of his hand, Lin Feng sent Meng Gufeng flying over the edge of the city walls. The troops outside of the imperial city released their arrows which whistled through the air, and Officer Meng Gufeng joined his son, pinned to the city wall, lifeless. Lin Feng punished them both as criminals. In the world of cultivation, strength was the only thing that mattered, strength was justice. Lin Feng turned around and looked at the troops. Finally, he saw someone who had the armor of an officer. Are you the non-commissioned officer? Coldly asked Lin Feng. That person's heart was pounding. He had personally witnessed Meng Chong and Meng Gufeng's deaths. They had suffered a cruel fate. It was like the widespread rumors about the crown prince, whoever dared to contradict him, died. Indeed, said that person while nodding nervously. The princess and I need to go into the imperial city, we have things to do. Quickly open the gate, said Lin Feng calmly. That person was stupefied and remained silent. I will give you 5 seconds to think carefully about your next actions. If you don't let the princess in, you are committing an offense against the Shuayu imperial clan, said Lin Feng in a cold tone. He then immediately started counting, 1. 2. Open the gate. The non-commissioned officer's facial expression was rigid. How could he even give Lin Feng time to start the countdown? That guy had killed Meng Chong and his father. Lin Feng wouldn't hesitate to kill him too. No matter how the situation would be, the most important thing was to survive, the future problems had to be ignored. Open the gate, said the soldiers repeating the order. A rumbling noise spread through the atmosphere, the gigantic bronze gate slowly opened itself. Officer Ren, you and the troops, escort the princess into the imperial city and ensure her security, said Lin Feng sounding cold and detached. Ren Qingquang nodded and said, all right. Immediately, Ren Qingquang jumped in the air and landed back onto his horse's back. He shouted, let's escort the princess into the imperial city and ensure her safety. The troops, who covered a wide and vast area, all started galloping towards the imperial city. The crowd was speechless. Ensuring the protection of the princess was clearly an excuse to allow the troops' entry into the imperial city. But the princess didn't say anything. Lin Feng was controlling the entire situation, who would dare say anything? The noise of the horses galloping on the ground was unceasing. Lin Feng waited for all the troops to enter the imperial city and then, Meng Qing and he entered as well. Hanging on the imperial city walls were 2 corpses pinned with many arrows. The sight was, as before, a shocking for anyone who saw it. Lin Feng was an outstanding young man whose heart was burning with boldness. He had managed to reverse the course of the events once again. He was so bold that he had even killed Meng Chong and Officer Meng without even blinking. He had ruthlessly killed them. Of course, in order to be bold, one also had to have the appropriate strength. Lin Feng could easily defeat Officer Meng Gufeng who had broken through to the 8th Qi layer. He was extremely strong. The crowd had seen how monstrously strong he was. If he didn't die, he would one day become as monstrous as the 8 high officials of Shuiyu. Besides, he would soon be even stronger, even more monstrous, than the high officials at the bottom of the rankings. In the imperial city, there was an extremely vast square made of bluestone. In the imperial city, there was an extremely vast square made of bluestone. It was situated in a lively district of the imperial city. The flow of people heading in that direction was huge. In the middle of that square, there was a bright red flight of stairs made from metal which gave a dazzling light. That flight of stairs led up to a white stage. On that stage, there was a huge metallic pillar which had an cross symbol at the top. Chains were hanging from that cross. There were 2 extremely sharp hooks. The view was shocking. The purpose of these 2 hooks was to skewer the arms of a person attached to the cross. That stage was the death sentence stage and was used to kill those who had an illustrious social status but had angered the imperial family. Thus, everybody could witness the execution. After killing the criminal, the corpse would be hung from the cross by skewering his arms with the hooks. The body would then be hung there for weeks as a warning to everyone else. It let everyone know what the punishment was for angering the imperial family. At that moment, there was an ocean of people around the death sentence stage. They completely filled the huge square. However, those directly surrounding the death sentence stage were all Shuiyu soldiers. No one could get close to the stage. I really would never have thought that General Lu Zhanglan, the Divine Arrow, who was so majestic, so illustrious, would end up here today. In the crowd, some people were sighing. They were looking at the silhouette on the stage. It was precisely Lu Zhanglan. At that moment, Lu Zhanglan's body was tied up. Even though he was considered a criminal and was going to be killed, he looked neither humble nor arrogant. Lu Zhanglan had no regrets. He was innocent. In front of the crowd, 2 beautiful eyes were watching Lu Zhanglan on the stage. Glistening teardrops were flowing down a set of bright red cheeks. "Father, you have sacrificed your youth for Shuiyu and even devoted your entire life for it," and this is how they expressed their gratitude. That beautiful person was Lu Fei. She looked more mature and more beautiful than back in the days of the Yunhai sect, but at that moment, she was feeling lonely, desperate and hopeless. Her heart was shattering into 1,000 pieces. "Fei Fei, remember what your father told you, stay safe, live on. You will be able to avenge him only if you're alive." Next to Lu Fei was a middle-aged man. He looked calm but his heart felt painful as well, especially when he saw Duan Tianlang. He wished he could cut out his organs and bathe in his blood. Everything happened because of Duan Tianlang, including the death of hundreds of thousands of soldiers, but he was blaming Lu Zhanglan for all these things. He was blaming Lu Zhanglan for the kidnapping of the princess as well. It was a terrible fate for a hero like Lu Zhanglan. Everything was ridiculous. Lu Fei nodded, but could not utter a word. Her heart felt heavy. She had to avenge her father. Duan Tianlang could not be allowed to live. Either he would die or she would. "Your father has always been convinced that Lin Feng would protect and take care of you, that nothing would happen to him. After today, we will go and look for him even if it means going to Mou," said the middle-aged man. Lu Fei remained silent. Where was Lin Feng at that moment? She didn't know why, but at that moment, she terribly missed Lin Feng. She had never needed someone so much. When a woman feels lonely, she always thinks about the person whom she cares for the most. Lu Fei, at that moment, felt powerless. Her father was in front of her and was about to get executed, but she couldn't do anything to prevent it from happening. She could only calmly watch her father get killed. Duan Tianlang looked at the sky and had a smile of happiness on his face. Duan Tianlang had been waiting for this day for so many years. He had always wanted to kill Lu Zhanglan, and at that moment, he was about to be executed. How could Duan Tianlang not be happy? The time has come, let's get prepared, said Duan Tianlang sounding detached. Immediately after, four strong cultivators pulled the chains which tied Lu Tsanglan, his bindings suddenly tightened, and then, his body was pulled into the air. Lu Tsanglan didn't complain, his limbs were pulled in each direction and he was locked in place, he just continued gazing into the distance. He looked calm, he hated the choices he made in life, he wished he could go back in time. Raise your bows, said Duan Tianlang sounding cold and detached. On the bright red flight of stairs, many soldiers raised their bows and aimed at Lu Tsanglan. There were 81 archers, Lu Tsanglan obviously didn't have any chance to escape. A sharp chi spread through the atmosphere. Was this their way of humiliating Lu Tsanglan? His nickname was the Divine Arrow, he was an expert in archery, and they were going to execute him using archery. However, at that moment, the crowd could feel that the ground was shaking, and it was getting more and more intense. They were surprised. The sound of galloping horses spread through the atmosphere. The ground was shaking more and more violently. Duan Tianlang narrowed his eyes and looked at the distance. He only saw Qi Xie cavalry approaching in a large force, they looked like they were flying through the air, they looked insanely powerful. They were really the Qi Xie troops. What's going on? Duan Tianlang was stupefied. How did the Qi Xie cavalry make it there? They were supposed to be blocked at the city gate. It was impossible for them to come into the imperial city. Qi Xie cavalry, they came in. Yes, Uncle Jiu, your army, the Qi Xie cavalry. Lu Fei looked moved, Jiu Qi Xie was with her and Ren Qin Kuang was leading the Qi Xie cavalry for him. When he went to the imperial city, he thought that the Qi Xie cavalry would never be able to enter the imperial city. At that moment, Jiu Qi Xie saw a young and handsome man leading them. A smile appeared on his face. Fei Fei, it's Lin Feng, nothing is impossible for that boy. Surprisingly, he managed to gain entry for the Qi Xie soldiers into the imperial city, said Jiu Qi Xie in a low voice. Lin Feng's determination and willpower were impressive. He had completely altered the course of events, he had then killed the kidnappers and rescued the princess, and on top of that, he returned unscathed. Lin Feng had the ability to shatter everyone's expectations. There were tears of joy in Lu Fei's eyes at that moment, that was perfect timing on Lin Feng's part, and besides, he had brought the powerful Qi Xie cavalry with him, he would definitely be able to protect her father. However, they seemed to be forgetting that Duan Tianlang was extremely determined to kill Lu Tsanglan. Lin Feng. Duan Tianlang's facial expression turned evil. He immediately shouted, "Get ready to kill Lu Tsanglan." "Roger," shouted the archers in unison. Immediately, Lu Fei and Jiu Qi Xie's facial expressions drastically changed. "Duan Tianlang, don't you dare," furiously shouted Jiu Qi Xie while jumping in the air across the crowd. Boom boom boom. Jiu Qi Xie's blows killed a few of the archers. "Release the arrows," said Duan Tianlang with a cold smile on his face. The arrows whistled through the air, moving straight towards Lu Tsanglan. At that moment, Jiu Qi Xie's face turned deathly pale. He immediately threw himself forwards at full speed. He had dived in front of Lu Tsanglan's body to protect him from the arrows. His entire body was releasing qi in the form of a strong wind. His entire body was covered with a bright and resplendent qi. "Get away," shouted Lu Tsanglan, his facial expression drastically changed. At that moment, Lu Tsanglan's body was tightly tied up and he couldn't use his cultivation. All Jiu Qi Xie could do was protect Lu Tsanglan with his body. "Uncle Jiu," cried Lu Fei in alarm. Immediately after, the sounds of the arrows piercing through the qi spread in the air, the arrows then continued and pierced into Jiu Qi Xie's body, but they didn't continue moving towards Lu Tsanglan. Jiu Qi Xie's body was their final destination. "Brother," cried Lu Tsanglan. His heart felt infinitely painful. On his forehead was a pitch-black seal. That seal kept glowing, making him unable to use his strength. Die together, shouted Duan Tianlang coldly. He then started moving, but at that moment, a piercingly cold energy arrived on his body. He felt as if he was going to freeze on the spot. Frozen heart. Duan Tianlang stopped moving. His face turned deathly pale. He turned around and saw a wave of pure qi roll towards him. It was brutally cold. In a flash, he felt the extreme coldness on his body and was projected backwards, unable to move closer to Lu Tsanglan. Die, said Lin Feng furiously. Lin Feng was brandishing his sword. Its light was extremely resplendent and dazzling to the eyes. The archers were unceasingly firing their arrows. Lin Feng's expression revealed pure killing intent. Ren Qingquang immediately killed the 4 people who were pulling the 4 chains which were holding Lu Tsanglan in place. Blood was unceasingly flowing from Jiu Qixie's mouth, but he was smiling. General, I will sacrifice my life for yours. After I die, Lin Feng can become the officer of the Qixie troops. Arg. Lu Tsanglan was endlessly grieved, his eyes were filled with tears. Jiu Qixie had been an extremely good friend for a dozen years. They had never argued and had always regarded each other as real brothers. They considered each other family. Many times, they had fought battles shoulder to shoulder. However, at that moment, Jiu Qixie had sacrificed himself. General, I would like to say one last thing. Jiu Qixie was leaning against Lu Tsanglan. He then leant over and whispered something in Lu Tsanglan's ear. The intensity of Jiu Qixie's voice was dropping. When he finished talking, he looked at Lu Tsanglan and smiled at him. General, for more than a dozen years, I have never called you anything else other than General. When addressing you, today, I will call you my brother. The word brother had a deep meaning. After saying that, Jiu Qixie's voice lost in intensity, his breath became weak and his vision became blurry. His vitality was quickly leaving his body and his eyes slowly closing. He was calmly lying against Lu Tsanglan's chest with an unchanging smile on his face. Lu Tsanglan was looking at Jiu Qixie and an endless stream of tears started to fall from his eyes. Brothers, could such a simple word really describe the relationship that these two had over these countless years? Jiu Qixie was motionless, lying against Lu Tsanglan's chest. He would never wake again. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.